welcome to the Appalachian Podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Billy Riddle. God, I screw up a word in the first 10 seconds of almost every episode I've done here. Billy Riddle, the Appalachian Podcast. We are not being joined by my usual co-host, Bodine, Jeff Taylor. I don't really know what he's doing today, and I didn't bother to ask him. So what we got going on here today is a really good roundtable discussion with a few familiar voices and a new one. And these are one of the episodes that when I started this show, it's kind of, I want to have discussions like this. I think stuff like this is super cool, and I don't really know where the discussion is going to go, but once you understand the round table of people I have here, then you know, we can kind of go from there. But we're being joined by Amos Denton of the Woodshop Chronicles. He's the one that hosts that, and he's been on a couple shows here. Amos, welcome back.
Absolutely.
And probably the most familiar voice, yet probably the only one you've heard on one episode, but it's so unique that you won't forget it. We're up here with Simon Winch again today, the Englishman. Simon.
Oh dear, here we go. Brace yourself.
So with these two on here is kind of my part of my round table here tonight. It's you know it's going to be kind of a little bit of a philosophical, but you know, a conversation based in reality. And it's really good because I've had conversations like we're going to have here tonight with Amos for so long, for so many years. Like we'll sit up here at his wood shop till, 1, 2 in the morning, just talking and debating these things and bouncing these ideas off each other. And I think it's things like this that make you smarter, at least, question things a little bit different, see things from different perspectives. So the gentleman we have here joining us tonight, Brandon Decker, I guess you're the patriarch of the whole state of Appalachia concept. And I just run across it when I started the podcast. I started kind of finding any Appalachian theme related pages on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, just to kind of, see about it. And I come across his page and I was like, man, this dude's got 12 or 13,000 people looking at this stuff. And it's a lot of really smart Appalachian themed, secession, essentially, kind of, and that's a taboo topic. That's why we're going to talk about it.
Oh, so, yeah, bring it on.
Yes. So just kind of explain yourself a little bit and kind of, I guess where I hit on the mark with that introduction.
All right. Well, first off, thank you for having me. I've been listening to you guys for a little while now, and it's a great honor to be here. Some of my followers may know me as Smokey the Appalachistani. But then there's also the Decker's Ridge homestead page that we started running recently, and that's our new farm that my girlfriend and I are starting together. So she's going to be dealing with a lot more of the homesteading posts, unlike last summer where it was mostly me dealing with it. Right now, a lot of my posts are just memes, though, but I'm in the process of still moving in, starting my homestead, and researching and writing papers takes a long time, so sometimes I like to just laugh and make fun of people at the same time.
Well, you're in good company for that.
Perfect.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't get any better. I'm intrigued about the homesteading angle because pretty much here at the cabin and the farm, this is what we're doing. It's a mindset as much as a way of living. Mm-hmm. But I'm intrigued about the mechanics of what is a homestead, how do you get a homestead status?
Right.
Really, I again, I'm that there foreigner and know very little about it. Other than it's probably a darn good concept and a lot more people should be doing it.
Thank you. I mean, just driving up, I was already amazed by all the stuff you have and thinking like, oh, hey, they've got stuff that I want in the future, so we're going to have a conversation after this.
Right on.
I mean, let's be honest, homesteading's what made Appalachia become something other than a mountain.
Oh, absolutely.
It was, nobody wanted the Appalachian Mountains. That's why they gave the land away to the soldiers when we couldn't pay them. I mean, that's how the place got settled.
Good farmland isn't a vertical incline like I own at my house, but you can make it into it if you try hard.
Well, I look at it as we get to farm both sides of the fields. Out west, I just get one side.
Yeah.
That's very funny.
Get to apply the uphill both ways and 3 feet of snow with no shoes concept every single day.
So, from Jersey to Floyd.
Yes.
Fill in the blanks.
So, I've been told by my friends I can ramble on about this forever, so I'm going to try and give you guys the Cliff Notes version.
We've got alcohol here. We can make any version you want.
So I was
good
born
to
and
go.
raised in northwestern New Jersey, in a small mountain town. Typically, Appalachian town itself, it wasn't a coal mining town, but it was an iron mining town. And kind of like what's happening now with the coal mining communities of Appalachia and has been for the past 50 years, where the mines are shutting down, the company towns are disappearing, but the people still stay and have nothing better to do. Or not nothing better to do, but nowhere to go, really. That happened 150 years earlier when the iron mines shut down. So I was raised there. There's a lot of similarities to parts of where I live in Floyd right now to where I grew up. Specifically just community. Everyone would look out for themselves, look out for everyone else. Your neighbors talk to one another. You don't really get that anymore. And, when I lived in Chesterfield for 5 years, which came later on, obviously, I lived next to the same couple for 5 years, and our pleasantries were, "Hey, how are you doing?" And that was the extent of it. We didn't barbecue, we didn't talk outside of just the normal exchange.
Very insular.
Yeah.
And
Tragic.
that's how we ended up as society where we're at right
Exactly.
now. That's exactly how we ended up where we're at in society.
And they were nice people, but I lived right on top of them. I came home after working all day long and honestly just wanted to be left alone. So I got hired as a law enforcement officer in Chesterfield. That's how I moved down to Virginia. Ended up in animal control for 5 years, and I resigned January 18th of last year. My girlfriend, who was working at the animal shelter at the time, her and I decided, hey, why don't we try moving out, to the western part of the state. Her family's originally from the mountains. She was already aware of all the state of Appalachia stuff it's involved in, so it was kind of a...
Are you saying she's a hillbilly?
Yes.
Outstanding.
Perfectly.
I love that.
So where exactly is she from? Just
So
which county?
So her family, dating back, so I'm trying to think of where Nicely Town is. It's up by Covington, I think.
Nicely Town.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's north of Botetourt,
Okay.
like northwest of Botetourt a little bit. It's on the border, I think, with, or near the border with Western Virginia. That way.
Okay. Going
So-
up towards Highland County and Bath County. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real pretty.
We're
Yeah.
beautiful up there.
Yeah.
So her extended family's from there, but then she's all big into ancestry. She grew up in the Richmond metro area.
Okay.
She's from Ashland originally, or just north of Ashland. But we found out 2 or 3 weeks ago that her great-great-great-grandfather or step-grandfather owned 10,000-acre tract of land in Pilot off of Laurel Creek, which is, we're pretty much living on old family land now. We just found out, so that was actually really cool for both of us.
Yeah. That's it's crazy how you can date back and figure that kind of stuff out. Amos is a genius with that kind of stuff. Yeah. And Amos, you were talking about that Revolutionary War. That's the war they were using to.
Yeah, I mean, so like this whole region,
There she blows.
It's only my second beer, I promise. That's the wrong way.
You can keep going. We had a malfunction.
before the Revolutionary War, obviously, none of this area was developed. There was nobody here, period. And, after the war, the country was broke. So instead of paying the soldiers, they gave them tracts of land
Oh, yeah.
in the Blue Ridge. I mean, that's how...
King's Orchard, for example.
Like our place,
Yep.
that's been in the family since it was gave
Yeah.
at the Revolutionary War. The people next door, and so, the Gibson place, the Peters place, they were friends that fought together, got land side by side, and still the same family owns the same land.
Yeah.
But I think it depended about rank how much like if you were had a decent rank, like you got like 4,500 acres.
Yeah, I think it was like captains and upwards would start getting massive tracts
Yeah.
of land where...
But even pre-revolutionary, this cabin is on land granted by the lunatic King George III. And I don't mind admitting that he was a complete lunatic because he was. But this is part of the Prilliman plantation. So it predates that. Some of the logs that we reclaimed that the original guys that built my main house, they reclaimed some timbers from a pre-revolutionary property that was just down by the graveyard that we're overlooking now. It's since collapsed, and the old chimney fell sadly a few years ago. But these logs and these timbers came from a pre-revolutionary stronghold. It wasn't a fort, but it was pre-revolutionary. It was in the times of, where the Native Americans were
causing a ruckus.
Causing a ruckus, maybe rightly so.
Rightly so. Not maybe rightly so,
Yeah,
rightly so.
Rightly so. And this was the house that, and literally, if we look out the window here, we're looking up onto where that property was. It was a stronghold. It wasn't a fort, but it would be where the local community would gather, during these times of unrest and Indian raids.
Did you call it a blockhouse back then?
It was,
Strong
it
house.
was
Okay.
a strong house. It had the overhanging
Okay.
upper story so that they couldn't climb up on the roof and burn you out and do all the unpleasantness that.
Have any of you guys read a book called Dunmore's War? So I listen to a lot of audiobooks. So when I moved out here, my first job was working for Botetourt County doing just grounds maintenance. And back from when I was in law enforcement, I would listen to Audible all the time because I couldn't sit down and read a book, but you patrol 10, 12 hours a day. You work for really maybe only one or two of them, so a lot of times just sit around, absorb stuff. So when I was cutting grass, I was listening to this book called Dunmore's War, and it was about the last royal governor of Virginia, Lord Dunmore. And it was the last colonial war fought in North America before the American Revolution. And it was an Indian war. It was about expansion of territories throughout Southwest Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm listening to this book, and I'm cutting grass on it was like a disc golf course field. And they're talking, and I look to my right, and I'm standing literally where they're talking about, which, it's this obscure little colonial conflict I've never heard of before. And you realize you're standing right in the middle of it. So, I mean, I guess where I'm going with this, because now my mind's out someplace else. I apologize. You don't realize that you're standing in history until, you look around and you realize.
Well, then they're not taught history these days.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
oh, there's something contentious. Did I say that? Oh, here we go.
learning that a lot of the property in this part of America was just given away as payment for Revolutionary War is not something we learned in school. We never learned anything. You would learn the same old history lesson every single year from 5th grade to 12th grade. I mean, how many times can you talk about the same old things? Important things like that is why the public school system is such a drag, is because they're not teaching local stuff like that in schools like they should be. Like, learn about why your area matters, how it came to be. I mean, when Amos told me that years back about the payment for the wars, I was fascinating to me, and it never.
And they're scrubbing it in the most vile way.
Yeah, they're giving you the.
It's vile what they're doing in the public schools right now. I use that word without. I'm not even flinching to use it. It's vile.
And I look at like Callaway. I mean, we have no idea compared to other parts of the country. We think some of the stuff we've seen around here in Franklin County school systems, like we're like, appalled by it. Imagine what other places, how much worse it really is.
You don't even have to look too far. You can look to a few months ago with what was going on in Loudoun County with that.
Oh, yeah.
That poor girl that got raped in the bathroom up there, and the school knew about it, but they
and
shoved it
under the rug.
Well,
I'm gonna tell you right now, God, rest my soul.
Don't think that doesn't go on down in Ferrum College.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard some clean-up stories down there.
I wouldn't get kicked out of a school board meeting like that Dad did.
Well, they hauled him out in cuffs.
It escalated way before that.
They hauled him out in cuffs, I'm pretty sure.
I've been thrown out of one or two.
Yes, you have.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to learn some more about that from you too.
But,
myself getting involved in Floyd.
I honestly feel like that and not teaching history is the most disservice that you can do to any child. I loved history. I still do. Crazy, weird, love it. I wanted to research everything. Know where. I got a United States history book that was issued to the kids 1893. I got
I'd love to see that. Yeah.
it. You want to talk about something that is mind blowing? The history wrote down in 1893 of the American history.
Yeah.
I bet that was an interesting perspective.
Oh, it.
You know, but they say history is written by the victors.
That's right.
And I say that.
Are you ill about that?
Very flippantly. I knew this was going to come as me celebrating second place
That's only on 4th of July.
every 4th of July, and I'm proud to celebrate second place, by the way, because King George needed an arse kicking. But let's not sanitize history, and let's not try and rewrite history either. You know, because when you try and rewrite history, you're being very disingenuous to start with. And I think you're doing the students a great disfavor by doing this. By all means, bring out the brutality of history and the honesty of history, but let's not try and rewrite it.
Well, and let's also, there's also a big part of history that comes with, they're lined through a mission. And it's funny how people, and I'm speaking about a lot of these just lunatic progressives out here that take, one in a box look at history and decide that that's the hill they're going to down, and that should be evidence enough for this or that. But okay, but they don't want to have the honest discussion about anything. And a prime example is the Native Americans. Mm-hmm. Okay, yes, we came in here and
Ran them
people.
out. We ran them out.
Yeah, we ran them out. There were wars fought. There were battles. One conquered the other. Yes. Do these people honestly think that before we ever got here, these same group of Native Americans weren't roaming around, conquering each other, killing each other for land, for resources, and things like that?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, slavery certainly didn't begin in the United States in the 1700s.
You'd be very naive to think that
It
was
surely
the case.
did end. It ended there for the most part. So I mean, like, why it to demonize a place that ended up being the one that ended it. I mean, Great Britain had ended it before us, I'm pretty sure, but still, at the end of the day, like, yes, we can have a conversation about that. That's a black eye on American history. It certainly is. But in the same aspect, let's have a conversation about the fact that was everywhere in the world at that time. I mean, everywhere.
And if you go down that road, in 100 years, everybody's a vegan, and it is absolutely the most cannibalistic thing ever that somebody would have ate meat. Do we erase everybody that ever ate meat? I mean, because that's the road you go down.
Cancel them because they're
you can't talk about this guy because he was a meat eater. Mm-hmm. We got to topple this guy's statue because he owned a slave.
Yeah.
Time marches on, and every era is different. Mm-hmm. And history's history. It can't be rewrote, right, and it can't be watered down. History is history.
Stop cancelling it is what I say.
Well, I mean, it's not even taught. I mean, I memorize and can recite the whole Gettysburg Address. I can tell you every president from start to finish. That's not because, my mom was a brutal teacher. I was homeschooled. But you got to know. You should want to know where you came, where you came from. If you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you're going. If you cannot have an open mind and understand what it's took to get to present day, then how in the world do you think you can plan anything for the future?
And the good thing with history, if it's taught correctly, is you cannot apply it unevenly. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to put this to the folks that think that tearing down Civil War statues is a good idea. And I'll even reflect on the one that's in front of the Rocky Mount courthouse. That statue is a representation of a Civil War soldier.
Of all of them from this area.
Of all of them. Now, we have to acknowledge, and there's no denying it, that Virginia seceded and wanted to break away from the Union. And they fought a war over those principles. Now,
unfair taxes
and government overreach, unconstitutional behavior by the federal
state
government.
rights.
Well, let's not forget that
States'
Virginia
rights.
didn't secede until President Lincoln, asked them for drafting a certain amount of men to raise an army of 75,000 to invade the states that had already seceded.
Absolutely. Let's not forget that General Lee was actually asked to lead the Union Army.
He was
before
big.
he accepted the post from the Virginia.
And unlike future President Grant, he did not have slaves at that time. He had already sold off.
Absolutely.
Because he didn't believe
So
in bondage.
what I say to everyone about that particular statue is, yes, I can figure out that there's contentious issues with it being positioned in front of the courthouse. I understand that. It is what it is. However, even if we move it to the War Memorial, not more than 150, 200 yards down the road, that's still not going to stop this issue. Okay? Because we know that certain people view this as so contentious. Let's view it another way. I'd like people to consider that this is commemorating and respecting the Americans that died fighting for the Confederacy. Rightly or wrongly. I mean, you can have your opinion on what the Confederacy was about, but it certainly wasn't solely about slavery.
Well, it goes back to what you said earlier. History is written by the victors.
Absolutely. But I say, if you're going to apply history, let's apply it evenly. So these were American lives, and this statue is representing the Virginians that fought for the Confederacy. They were Americans too. So don't disrespect them.
The Virginians were fighting for Virginia.
Absolutely.
They wasn't fighting, almost every single soldier in the Confederacy was not fighting for a broader cause. They felt like each state should have the right to govern itself, and the federal government shouldn't be. I mean, that is what.
Are we not at that crossroads now?
Yeah. Well, yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
Well, we have been ever since.
Yeah.
But General Lee, he was that convicted that state rights have to be. State rights should have that much power. Each state should have the power to.
The federal government was set up with that principle in mind. It's the federal government that has overreached that position, but on its original foundation, states' rights were the core of the federation.
Mm-hmm. There's also the argument that none of the states would have agreed to join into the larger union if they knew that going down the road they wouldn't be able to leave if they didn't think that they were getting correct representation. The South didn't believe that they were getting correct representation. And
they what?
You can argue, sure, the biggest topic of the time was slavery, because there was big contention throughout the 1850s, but it wasn't the only issue that,
Don't think the Confederacy was going to abolish slavery either.
Yeah.
Of course it was.
But I mean, the North was full of slaves as well.
That's something I was going to bring up is the Emancipation Proclamation didn't free a single slave.
And it didn't even come into like 2 years after the war started, correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
they needed bodies.
Lincoln said that if he could end the war without freeing a single slave, I would, or if I could win the war by freeing all the slaves, I would.
And said that, from the beginning, the declaration of war, it was fought over succession.
He changed the concept.
Didn't Lee also say that if he, if he would free every slave if it could end the war? Didn't he also say that?
I believe he said.
Yeah, he did.
Some of that, yes,
I'm pretty sure
he had already freed his before the Civil War.
Yeah, Lee's a very interesting character because also he's in an area that I wouldn't consider to be in Virginia today. Because if you're just outside of D.C. or if you're north of Fredericksburg, really, you're just a suburb of Washington.
Well, his farm's
his
farm's a giant graveyard.
Yes,
and that was on purpose.
Yes.
Yeah, Lincoln wanted Lee to see, basically, this is what you've caused this country to have happen.
Well, I mean, they start showing up with tons of dead bodies.
Yeah.
Where are we going with
a place to put them?
Take them to Lee's farm, bury them in his backyard.
The other thing, because I'm currently reading Rebel Yell about Stonewall Jackson, and one of the things that's made very prevalent in the book is, interviews with average Virginians, especially from the Shenandoah Valley, that in Lexington area that joined up with General Jackson. When they were asked, why are you fighting the war? It wasn't, because, I have slaves or I want to have slaves. It was, I'm fighting because you're down here. You know, you invaded my homeland, I'm going to defend it. And it's the same thing I say. You know, my girlfriend and I joke about it. You know, if we have kids and somebody says, "Oh, you know, they've got guns over there. Let's send CPS to make sure they're doing well." We'll be like, "Hey, you know, you can stay on the road, or you know, you'll never be found again. I'm sorry. I'll fight for my land and my, you know, my family over whatever petty rule the government decides to make."
It's rather ironic that there's an Englishman in on this conversation. I kind of laugh my arse off on this because it just appeals to me. But this is the intrigue of history.
Yeah.
You know, it is what it is.
Well, history is doomed to repeat itself when you forget it.
Or you try and rewrite it. Yeah.
I mean, and that's, you end up right back.
Well, I don't think
All the way
history.
around.
I don't think history repeats. It rhymes. You know what I mean?
Comes very close.
Yeah. It rhymes. And I mean, and that's a great part about having Simon. I mean, you know, like I said earlier, me and Amos have had tons of these conversations over the years at the wood shop. You know, from where he grew up in the church and where Simon grew up overseas, and he's come here, and Brandon, you as well, coming from the north. We all bring different perspectives to the table, which we also alluded to this earlier. You don't want to sound like an echo chamber. Mm-hmm. And all four of us sitting right here, I mean, we couldn't have been raised any differently in different situations, perspectives, but, you know, somehow we've all managed to find our way right here on this mountaintop. And for that, we all have something in common. And by exploring those stories and talking about them and talking about history, that's why it's good to have you here. You know?
What we have in common is we're all willing to think.
Yes. Yeah, I'd agree with that, definitely.
You know, most people don't want to think. It's too painful.
They want to read a single source about something and say, okay, that must have been how this happened.
Yeah.
Moving on to whatever the
you know,
next
like Billy,
topic of the
like
day.
me and Simon, we love to sit around and talk. Me and Billy, you know, I'm devil's advocate. I mean, I will play it all day. You know, me and Billy, we'll be talking about a topic. I agree 100% with him, but I want to know him. I want to feel him out and see how sure he is of his
absolutely.
thoughts.
Yep, he's subject matter.
And we do it to each other. And I've changed my mind on stuff.
I mean, that's an important part of, you know.
The ability to compromise, and this is what's been lost with this divisive political environment that we're in, has been the ability to compromise. And I'm going to say something very contentious right now.
You don't say.
which shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. Is that we're living in an environment where if you don't agree with the progressive, and you don't conform with the progressive ideology, you know, you're the devil, and that to me is just a sign of fascism. And everyone swings around and says to me, "Well, they can't be fascist because they're not right wing." Fascism has got nothing to do with left and right wing. It's with an ability where they're not prepared to compromise their opinions or listen to an alternate opinion that is conflicting with theirs.
And control the people.
So what we're dealing with the progressive political society and an environment that we have currently is nothing more than fascism. And
wrapped up in a pretty bow.
Wrapped up in a pretty bow. And as soon as Democrats realise that their party has been taken over by progressives and the progressive Marxist agenda, then we'll be in a better place. But until that they can admit that has happened, I would love to sit around a table with Democrats and have a conversation about, you know, where we're going as a society. You cannot have that with a progressive.
But it's not just Democrats. I mean, there's a lot of Republicans that are guilty of it too.
There are very much so. There are the progressive Republicans, and that is the same issue. They are fascists.
Well, it comes down to basically the establishment. It's establishment Republicans, establishment Democrats.
The divisive.
It's a good old boys club. They, you know, get on C-SPAN and they argue and fight back and forth and slam books and scream and holler, just like WCW wrestlers back in the day. They
Yep.
get on stage, they body slam each other, they wrestle, and you know what they do? When the cameras are turned off, they go back to the locker room, back to their quarters, and they drink and they smoke and they laugh all the way to the bank every single
Yep.
night.
And these are the rhinos. These rhinos that we're currently dealing with that say one thing and react completely differently because there's a dollar advantage with the lobbyists, let's say. Well, there's another rabbit hole that we could go down. You know, it's become so divisive that if we can't learn to communicate and compromise, we're in way bigger shit than we can handle.
I agree. So, do either of you guys listen to Tim Pool's podcast by any chance?
Every day.
I
Did
don't.
you listen to?
Unfortunately.
That's where some of I've
Did you listen to Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene
absolutely
recently on it?
Absolutely.
So, I met Thomas Massey last summer at the Rogue Food Conference at the Polyface Farms up in Swoop, Virginia.
All right, Polyface.
So,
Okay, cool. Very
I
cool.
I love Polyface. I love Joe Salatin.
Yeah. He's got some great concepts.
Oh yeah, my friends and I, a bunch of my friends and I, we all have books from him, and we.
Yeah,
try
my
to
wife
attend
went to
lectures.
his farm.
I want to go outside of the conference just for one of the
Absolutely.
day trips. It's an amazing place. But Thomas Massey came down. We got to hear him talk. I got to meet him, and I've met a bunch of politicians throughout my life, and him and Nick Freitas are some of the only ones that I can kind of sit there and say, you know what, I think you're the
The real
ones that
deal.
are, yeah, you guys are the ones that are actually gonna, you're doing what you're saying, and you're actually fighting for, your constituents, and not just your constituents, but the broader base of, people, be it Virginians, Appalachians, Americans, even just humans in general. They're willing to, say, hey, you have rights, and we're gonna make sure that no matter what Congress decides to do today, that they have to at least adhere to our founding principle documents and stuff.
Those are the guys that we need to be putting in positions of governance.
Well, I think Thomas Massey is probably in my honest opinion, he is the current version of Ron Paul.
Oh,
I mean, actually he probably is. We probably have more in common with him than we do, Dr. Paul. Ron Paul was a doctor, and he was out there delivering babies nonstop, and he was calling just for, the most libertarian congressman we've ever had in the history of the country, probably. And Massey he might be a doctor, but he studied at MIT, but he's a farmer. So a lot of times they're interviewing him, and he's out there on his tractor. He really is a man of the people, and he's the guy that calls up and shows up. And he took a beating when he called Congress in to do their freaking jobs over the stimulus package at Trump.
He talks about that
Trump,
all
yes,
the time.
Trump called him up basically and said, "I'm going to ruin your career for doing this." And he's like, "Sir, I'm doing my job. This is like a $2 trillion or whatever it was stimulus package. Maybe we should come in and discuss it and vote on it. I mean, this is." And you know what? Trump couldn't. Even Trump saying, "I'll destroy your career," Massey only got bigger from it because more people opened his eyes.
Massey does a really good Trump impersonation. And I will try to give it justice, but he says that this was the phone call I received because he was on the floor, and he had his phone with him on silent, kind of like how we have him here, and he saw it was like unknown number, called him like 36 times, and finally one of his aides came out to him and said, "The president's trying to contact you." And he goes, "Oh." He stepped out with 1 foot in the chamber and 1 foot out, so they couldn't vote on the bill where he's not in it. They answered and said it was, it was the president, and he was like, "I'm going to come at you like you have never seen before. I'm going to destroy you." And I don't have the rest of the story, and honestly, if you listen to Tim Pool's podcast with him on it, he tells it great, but basically he just said, "I'm trying to get them to do their jobs," and he still talks about it, how, he was vilified for getting them to come to vote on the biggest spending package ever. But now they're still phoning in every single bill.
Yeah.
Or they're like, "Oh, we need a full consensus to..." What was the thing that they passed the other day? Something about hair or something like that. And
I'm not sure.
They have no problem coming in to vote on, non-discrimination against hair or whatever the Crown Act was that they just tried to pass. But they have a problem coming in to be on record to say, hey, let's print off another $3 trillion because... what's that thing? The guy's holding up the $10 bill and says, "Wow, these new $1 bills are really amazing."
Yeah, inflation is going to cripple cripple this nation, and it's one has to say it's by design.
Oh yeah.
You know, let's not think it isn't. Serious times are going to call for some serious people, and I've got to tell you, the 3 people that are in line for the crown, that hold the crown, and the 3 of them, they scare the shit out of me. Mm-hmm. And these are not serious people, and they cannot deal with serious problems. So, you know, and I've got to say it, and I know some great attorneys kicking around. I'm not going to mention them by name, but we don't want attorneys running the country. Mm-hmm. They call them legislators. No, we don't want legislators writing these laws running this country. We need businessmen running this country. It's a business. So if you're an attorney, please stop running for office and get out the damn way. Yes. Because what you're doing, and you can bleep me on this when you come to editing, you can go fuck yourself.
I'll have to agree fully with you on that.
There we go. Droppeth the bomb with the B-52.
Well, at the end of the day, you know, because I've toyed occasionally with the idea of, you know, running for office, but I don't think, you know, my best idea would be moving to Floyd and then 6 months later being like, hey, I'm going to also teach you how to run your lives. Like, I want to get to know my community a lot more, and if there's someone that can do a job better than I can, I want to let them do it.
Then promote them, absolutely.
Yeah, I view politics as it used to be, where it was looked at as a service, not as a career. How in the hell Nancy Pelosi is a millionaire, but me, a landscaper, is struggling to pay bills is beyond me.
Well, I mean, back, you know, in history.
Well, I know she's insider trading because they're allowed to do that.
She's a whole lot of stuff, but you know, if you were successful in your community, mm-hmm. you know, you could afford to take 4 years off from work, mm-hmm. basically. You know, you went up there. It was never supposed to be a career
politicians. Yeah,
no.
It wasn't supposed to be something that was fun and you enjoy. Like, you wanted to go up there and you're like, okay, I'm going to go serve my community. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to come back here and do what I enjoy doing.
Yeah, but you also did it by going to DC maybe for only a number of
times a year.
Really buying a house there for.
This has now become a centralised cesspit that is full. And it's a nest of vipers.
They don't buy houses there. Centrez is sleeping on the floor somewhere.
Oh, well, of course she
couldn't afford a house.
You mean the bar?
So to centralise DC, this is part of the downfall. I mean, this is where Rome became unhinged. Mm-hmm. DC's doing the same thing. There we go. Back to history. This is going to happen, folks.
So you're telling me that we're going to get a horse as our president? If we look at history,
a horse's arse, maybe.
Yeah, Nero made his horse proconsul. So,
but this is where we're at, you know. So to say in the days of yore, mm-hmm. you know, the congressman, the congressman and the senators need to be in their constituency.
Exactly.
They need to be held accountable by their constituents, and doing it in DC with the lobbyists and the amount of money that is there is absolutely contrary to that concept. So, you know...
But most of them don't even know they moved to a certain part to still, you know, I mean...
The gerrymandering? That was a new word. As an Englishman, someone said, oh, gerrymandering. I went, come on, get the fuck out of here.
You know,
there's that wonderful district in
What's
Chicago.
That word?
You know, there's definitely no, you know, the congressmen and stuff, they don't, I mean, it's all about the next election. It is not, and
that's one day. That is one day. So now that they've made all their promises for that one day and they've been elected, and we see this with even the local school boards and the local board of supervisors, they've been elected, and the very next day they can do anything they please because they are not held to the torch by their constituents who have given them, as a democratic republic, the right to represent them, but not be answerable to them.
Well, I think that
Wow.
I think that over the last 2.5 years of nonsense we've had to deal with, I think that's the biggest silver lining of it all is more and more people are now honed in on local politics. And the more people that hone in on local are going to start more honing in on national as well. And they're going to keep up with it every single day. And
Yep. I hope so.
and you know, people have mentioned to me, about running for mayor or town council of Rocky Mount, and I've plundered it and thought through it and contemplated it. And at the end of the day, I honestly think I would serve my community better
From the
sitting here
outside.
and doing this
Absolutely.
right here and getting people fired up about holding those people accountable than I would be just being another cog in the wheel. Because I'm going to go in there and pretty much just vote no on everything. I'm a
Yep.
libertarian. Anything, nope.
Hold
nope,
their feet
nope,
to the flames.
nope.
I mean,
But we
how
can't- we
ironic
can't do
is it?
that.
It took an Englishman showing up at the board of or the school board. It took an Englishman showing up in Franklin County to get Franklin County stirred up about the school. I mean, seriously.
Well, you need somebody.
Localism is important, though. At the end of the day,
It's the root.
yeah, everyone likes, especially with my followers, be them libertarians or anarchists, in the sense that they just don't want government at all. They
Conversation
realize
me and Simon had last
they,
night.
They like
Yes,
to
it
say,
is.
oh, hey, you're still voting. It's like, well, I'll vote in local elections because at the end of the day, whatever Joe Biden mumbles about, I'm not going to pay attention to. Whatever, Governor Youngkin, decides, it's not going to necessarily affect me. But at the end of the day, the school board or the town council member that oversees my district, if he says, oh, hey, you can no longer have this type of fence on your property, and I'm in the process of fencing it. Fences are expensive, man. I don't want to have to deal with that. I'm sure you got some beautiful looking fences out here.
Cost a bloody fortune.
But
too.
I mean, and that's what they do. I mean, you think about like all these ranchers and stuff out west. Bureau of Land Management.
Oh, yeah.
All of a sudden you ain't allowed to run your cows on it no more.
Oh, like the Bundy family with
Yeah.
Bunkerville? Yeah.
Well, I mean, and there's a lot of that happens. I mean, we don't know unless I mean, I have friends that live in Texas and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I know stuff. I mean, but just up and out of the blue. I mean, we can decide. So they made. I don't know if it was EPA or whatever. You couldn't let the cows be in any navigable waterway.
Oh, yeah.
EPA.
I've been reading about
So-
the navigable waterway stuff recently.
But their definition of that is anything that's had enough water in it to float a vessel. So that could be a dry gulch. 20 years ago, there was a storm that had enough water in it. Your cows can't be in there now. Well, I mean,
They're changing it, too, to say now that a tributary of any stream that you can navigate with a vessel, but then they're not saying, okay, let's take my house, for example. I live off of Laurel Creek in Floyd. It's a small creek, but there's an even smaller little stream that feeds into the creek. Is that considered navigable underneath their
the spring
pack?
coming out of the mountainside is.
Yeah, so now I have protected water lands. The government can just say, oh, hey, we're coming on your property to look at water,
Well,
for whatever reason.
Here's the deal with government when it comes to this concept, and you need to apply it with a broad stroke. Is that government has the ability to influence people with a carrot or a stick. The
Yeah.
waterways and all of that is the stick. And let me tell you, they are going to beat the shit out of you for it.
Well, even
Oh,
if
yeah.
you drill a well, at your house, like the well driller has to fill out paperwork and turn in how many gallons a minute that well's producing.
Yeah.
And by law, if that well's producing over, I'm not sure if it's like 30 gallons.
30 gallons.
30 gallons a minute. He has to record that with the government so the government knows that said well out here in the middle of nowhere is 30 gallons a minute.
I tell them my well's broken. I just go collect water by the bucket from the stream. They got no need to come on my property.
My granddad Denton was a little bit of a ruthless individual. And they at one time the salesman people calling around trying to sell stuff on the phone for the septic or whatever, annoying him, and one of them called one day and was talking about, he's like, dude, I don't have a septic tank, and they were like, well, where you go to the bathroom? He said, I shit in a bucket and sling it out the window.
I mean, I think that's kind of what drove me towards libertarianism at the end of the day was, am I more free today than I was yesterday?
Hell no.
Exactly. Every day they're coming up with a,
New rule.
why do I have to go to every Board of Supervisors meeting to make sure that they're not passing another law? There's never, hey, we're going to vote on removing all these 500 laws in this book that have no bearing on modern society or just are plain in bad, what's the word? In bad faith. It's not meant to actually help people. It's meant to enrich a few political elites. They're never sitting there doing that. They're always sitting there saying, oh, hey, we're going to rezone, Bob's Pizza to say, oh, you can only have 2 seats inside right now. Or, Mr. Wilkins down the street, he's got this nice farm with 150 acres, but, we could really use a subdivision there for all the extra money. So we're going to reclassify his land. We're going to up his local tax, his property taxes on it. And he's no longer going to be able to afford that farm that his family has had for 12 generations. Government, to me, is at the end of the day, there's parts of it that are necessary, I believe, but for the vast majority of it, it's an unwieldy beast that is just meant to try and suck as much out of us through taxes.
I mean, a small government that has checks and balances
Correct.
is a necessity.
Not
for
executive
any society.
orders.
Huh.
Not executive orders.
Exactly. But I mean, it has grown. The government's just grown to the point, and red tape. You think about this: the Empire State Building was built in 16 months. Mm-hmm. Hell, it took them 6 years to build a damn bridge across Bat Creek to get to Roanoke.
Yep.
I mean, and that is all red tape. Mm-hmm. That is every bit of that is government red tape.
Yeah.
I came up here 6 or 8 months ago to you about to lose my mind about an article that I'd read here locally. When you want to talk about local and Board of Supervisors stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I
know
was
where
telling
this
you
is
about this before we got on the air. But I was reading an article about them trying to build a new firehouse in Union Hall, Glade Hill area.
Was it Glade Hill?
Now, if you've ever been in Glade Hill, it's not exactly the metropolis you might think it is based off the numbers that they were throwing out here for their firehouse. I'm sure that they're not getting calls on a consistent basis but where their place is now, yes, it is probably dilapidated and probably needs an upgrade or a new place built. I can agree with that, and I think the community should get together and fund that. Absolutely.
Put a number on it, Billy. I know you're going to.
Their number. I asked Amos before I even gave him the number. I said, Amos, if I came to you as a government entity and asked you, could you come in here and build us a really sweet firehouse with, office space, maybe a little bit of sleeping quarters and bays for the vehicles that are necessary? What would you do it for? He said, I could build you the sweetest thing that you've ever seen for $550,000.
There you go.
The proposed amount for a Glade Hill building
Listen
was
carefully.
$5.5 million. You are
you could
frickin'
you could take
minds.
$2 million and build a super sweet firehouse in Glade Hill. $5.5 million. Who do you think you are, Chelsea Clinton?
I don't know what's sadder, though, you telling me that number or me not batting an eye at it out of working in the government for so long. Is because I know at the end of the day, like, oh, hey, this thing that shouldn't be that expensive, because you have that nice, G government word with a capital letter on it, it's going to be, astronomical in prices.
Well, another one in this town, and this is a big argument I've had with my co-host Bodine many a times, and it just burns me up. But that roundabout down there at Hardy Road in 122, $1.6 million for that thing, and I'm sitting there thinking,
To make a circle.
why don't you just put up a stoplight right there, a stoplight? Well, still, it's going to have traffic backed up around those corners, and people are going to be flying around those corners. Hey, and people are going to be flying around those corners with the roundabout as well. And if you want to, maybe 1,000 feet back from the stoplight, have a blinking sign saying "stoplight ahead." Simple. Not $1.6 million to going into a roundabout. I mean, I get the intersection is dangerous, but let's start talking about these things and understanding where our money is going on a local and state level. It's absurd.
You want to know a secret about traffic circles in Blacksburg and next to Virginia Tech?
Oh man.
So with me, with the landscaping, sometimes I'm just in a normal Silverado pickup. Other times I'm in a dump truck with trailer pulling equipment. I just kind of go straight. I'm sorry, I'm not playing your game. I'm not, I'm not European. I'm not living in Europe. I don't have to do this. And I do it in front of cops all the time, and they usually just I watch them because they just.
Is it like a flower bed or something in the middle?
I've gone through a flower bed, but usually it's grass. But they've got like a brick paver portion built up. I just go straight through. No, it's not worth my time. It's only a second, but yeah. And sure, the people of Blacksburg are probably really offended that I ran over their patch of grass, but I didn't.
No, that's a protest.
Yeah.
But listen, I mean, if people actually knew how to drive, we wouldn't need half the stuff we have.
It's terrible, man.
I mean, everything. I'm convinced that everything in life is done for you. I mean, there's a warning label on everything. Everything's done for you. The only thing that's not done for you is driving down the road. People can't pull it off.
Not yet. The Teslas are coming with that. My dad's got one. When I
Don't
visited
use-
him down in Florida, he's like, use the self-driving mode. I'm like, why would I? Why? I
can-
like driving.
There's been a few times at 2:30 in the morning I'd like to have
Truck
self-driving mode.
Yeah. Well, Bodine has a Tesla. We're not going to talk about that.
But, I mean, just like he was talking about, like, all the trucks now have to have automatic braking. And, like, our friend Doug Montgomery he has a bunch for FedEx and stuff. Like, on windy like, super sharp mountain passes and stuff, like, the truck, when you meet a car in a curve and it'll think that you're getting ready, like, it'll lock the brakes up on the truck.
it's locked him up on me before on 122 down there in Hardy. And I mean, I started sliding towards the vehicle, and I was just, I was just going through there at a reasonable speed.
The roundabout concept, by the way, when it's done right, does work.
I mean, I like roundabouts.
In the right situation, you don't need one at
Hell no.
122 in Hardy for $1.5 million when a stoplight would have sufficed.
Come on, man. It's down at the lake.
Come on, man. that the whole concept, though, even and the way that they've done it, I understand why they did what they did there with the offset roundabout, because here we go. Americans generally don't know how to navigate a roundabout. Now, you go into Naples, Italy, and they've got maybe 6 or 7 roads coming onto a roundabout. It's a miracle, especially when you're dealing with Italian drivers. They do know how to navigate a roundabout. We don't. Simple as that.
Yeah, but that's a little bit. I mean, a roundabout, something like that many roads coming in, that's very understandable.
Absolutely.
You figure out how to navigate it.
But it's a T-junction. It's
but-
a freaking T-junction. Come on.
But that one down there, I mean, and it's so small and so tight, you can't hardly get a big truck and stuff through it.
Genius at work. Thank you, town planners.
Just learn
Thank
how to
you-
drive.
Thank you, business managers. You did a great job.
It just goes back to it's just another example of waste. Another example of tax dollars going somewhere where they can be used much more efficiently. Look, me and Simon had this conversation last night up at Chaos. And by the way, just to get off topic for a second, if you weren't up there at Chaos last night,
You missed a treat.
I got in trouble. Thanks to Amos.
I had to be driven home.
But Billy Hurt burnt the strings off that fiddle.
I showed
Yes,
up
he
at like
did.
8:15, 8:30. I told my wife on the left, I said, look, I'll probably get up there in time to see the last 30 minutes of music because they stop at 9 o'clock.
Five Mile Mountain Road Band.
Yes, 5 Mile with Billy Hurt. And
5 Mile Mountain Road Band.
they played until probably 10 or
Unbelievable.
later.
I've never seen anything
And
like
I showed up thinking, okay, I'm going to get a front side spot, get to pull right on up in here. Most people be heading on out of here. Got there still at the park, football field away on the side of the road, and get in there, and everybody and their cousin is in there.
Yep.
You got Ryan Woods, the legend. You got Simon.
Hippie Wilson
Amos,
was down there,
Hippie
and
Wilson.
Jesus Cruiser.
He was wearing his JBs. I've never seen a man wear shoes before.
Ah.
That was a fun night.
Oh, it was. I mean, anybody that likes bluegrass, old time bluegrass, you should check out the 5 Mile Mountain Road Band. My 6-year-old, it's her favorite band.
Billy Hurt can play a fiddle.
Oh
I'll
my
check it out
word!
when I get home. That's for certain.
I've never seen or heard anything like it. It was phenomenal.
And he's a unique individual in himself. And Amos, I think we got it on last night. We got a show with him hopefully coming up here in the near future. Because, we could probably sit around with him for 2.5 hours and not even talk about music.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Hey Billy, can you do me a favor? Behind you on the top shelf, there's a brown liquid in a jar. That's the baby. It's very traditional, I believe, and I'm one for tradition. Thank you, Billy.
But yeah, Simon and I were. What were we talking about last night? What was my thought heading into that? We were getting ready to.
I know we were chewing the cud on something. What the hell was it?
Well, it might have been the term anarchy.
Oh,
and
yes,
how-
it was.
And it kind of leads into some other terminologies that have been
Misappropriated.
very much so. You know, when people think of anarchy, their first idea is a lawless society with a bunch of biker gangs running around and like
Thinking
Mad Max
chaos.
kind of stuff. Yeah, chaos, absolutely chaos. No, anarchy
At Chaos
is just,
Brewery.
yes.
Yes.
Well, anarchy is just without government.
Anarchy is what we have right now, but the government is the ones creating it.
Well, they're creating anarchy in the sense that you have been told to understood what anarchy is, but anarchy in itself is just not being governed at all. And people,
That's our government.
well, they are, yes.
Yes.
Well, no, they're just not held accountable.
They're not being
held-
governed.
Yeah, they aren't. It is anarchy for them. Yeah, that's a good point. But I told him, I said, you know, the reason I consider myself an anarcho-capitalist, and the reason that I start there is if you're going to be so far left or so far right in any crazy direction where you almost don't even make legitimate sense about your positions,
That's called fascism.
then I'm going to have to start at as far as I can possibly go and say absolutely no government. But
And be willing to come back.
But yes, but I'm willing. So let's take the teacher debate we were talking about last night. And we've talked about public schools on here. Look, we've got some really good people in this county that are in public schools. We have some good people that I trust, that I enjoy.
Absolutely.
And anytime I'm talking about public schools being a shit show and the same as you, we're not talking about the teachers themselves. Maybe we're talking about the teachers that suck and that need this system to prop them up. But the good ones, the ones that really do care, you know what? I don't want my tax dollars going to support public schools. That being said, I would rather, here's the concession I would make, give that $20,000, $25,000 a year that goes towards every single student in the state, give it to the parents. The parents can decide to homeschool their kid, send them to a pod, send them to a bigger school, do whatever they want to do. With that money, they can not work to be able to teach their kids the values that they want to instill in them. And I can make a concession. And some of our friends that are teachers would start pods around here in Callaway and places, and they would make a whole lot more money than they're doing right now. They would have a whole lot more freedom, and they would actually be able to teach the kids things.
And would have parents that backed up,
Exactly.
backed them up.
Exactly. So when I'm saying about public schools, people take that as, oh, you don't want people to learn. No, they're not learning in public schools.
But
they're just learning what to think, not how to think.
It's like how you call it, there's no more journalists on the planet. They're all just reporters.
that's
They're
right.
They're hacks.
That's gone.
They're hacks.
They
Yeah.
get their,
No, there
they
are
get
some.
their, they get their
There are
little
some.
sheet in the
a few. You got
there's
your
a couple,
Glenn
but for the-
Greenwalds, and you got your James O'Keefe with Project Veritas.
But it don't.
Yeah.
But if big
I
tech
love James O'Keefe, man.
if big tech don't, big tech has the ability to completely silence
Well, that's
anybody at any time.
back to what you were saying about its fascism. Is at the end of the day, they like to say, oh, we're this public-private partnership where the government's gonna, like NPR for example, it's a public-private partnership. What's another word for a public-private partnership where the government has a controlling interest, or at least behind-the-scenes controlling interest of a corporation? It's a fascist.
Communism.
It's a fascist state, really, is what it is. When the government is in charge of whatever the industry is, be it the media,
Well, those monopolies can't exist because they are not in the interests of the taxpayer. So we've been sidelined whilst we're being robbed. How do you figure that one out?
40 years ago, the government would have never let Facebook be Facebook, or they would have split that up.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Because it's almost impossible to start up something to compete with, say, Twitter, Facebook. I mean, you can't do it.
They'll buy you out.
They're going to shut you down. I mean, and that's the biggest problem.
As terrible as it sounds, I remember the days of YouTube when I can go on there and watch, a bunch of cartel members behead someone in South America, and it was, watch at your own risk. Now, because of, after there was the rise of ISIS where they burned that poor Jordanian pilot alive, oh, hey, we have to censor this content. You're not allowed to see it, and we're going to save you from it. But at the end of the day, it's still out there.
Don't
Just
save me
because-
from it.
Yeah, just because you're saying, oh, you're not allowed to watch this doesn't mean it didn't happen.
That's not saving you from anything.
Think of how many people, if the government today said, let's say in an alternate reality, let's say Germany won the Second World War, and
That's a great show on Prime if you've never seen it, by the way. It's a great show. They turned that into a show.
You know how much
was
TV
it
I
Man
watch.
in the High Castle?
Yes, Man in the High Castle, fantastic.
But if they won, and then they could, if they got their way and continued out their final solution and, wiped out all the quote-unquote undesirables, today Mark Zuckerberg, anytime someone would say, oh, the Holocaust happened, they would say, that's disinformation, or, hey, this is sensitive content, you shouldn't watch this, we're not going to even post it, we're going to fact-check you even and say this didn't happen, because they're protecting a larger narrative. But at the end of the day, just because you're saying that didn't happen doesn't mean it didn't happen. I'm not going to get into the
tool of censorship is a very dangerous road to be going down. I disagree with it in its entirety. Next thing you know, they'll be burning books.
I mean, and yes, but I think it's by design.
Well, they're just going to delete your access to your Audible.
Yeah,
and Kindle
absolutely.
accounts, so they don't even have to burn them anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely by design.
Yeah.
And this is what I get into it with a lot of libertarians about, and to be perfectly honest, I don't really like Democrats too awful much. Not a huge fan of Republicans, but libertarians irritate me more than anybody else there is out there. Because half of them
so you're a true libertarian.
Yes, half of them out there that claim to be libertarians can't even see past the first layer of all this nonsense when it comes to Twitter and Facebook. And these are probably just a bunch of lefties that are just coming in trying to infiltrate and stir up trouble. But you'll see them see things like, well, Facebook and Twitter, they're private companies. They should be able to do what they want to do. Yes, I completely agree that is how it should be. But Facebook and Twitter are getting subsidized by the government, and they have government contracts, and they are. And if you don't think that they are working with the alphabet boys from top to bottom, you're out of your freaking minds. And anytime any competitor tries to come up and they squash that competitor, that's not free market. That's cronyism, and that's what these people are. So no, Facebook is not a private company. So no, they shouldn't be censoring anybody. And if they are, you need to be considered a publisher. Not a platform.
Absolutely.
Here's
totally
a perfect example of what you're saying, of how they're helping the government is. So when I was in law enforcement for 5 years, oh hey, I'm trying to locate a certain person, or someone turned in a dog or something like that, says that it's not theirs. First thing I do is I look them up on Facebook. Oh hey, their profile's public. I can find all this information. Oh, there's a photo of them with a dog. Then I reach out to Facebook. Say, hey, I'm giving you a FOIA request, or I'm subpoenaing your records, actually. I need all the chat logs between these three individuals from this date till this date. And 9 times out of 10, Facebook a week later arrives with a truck, and they just wheel in carts of printed material for you. We had it for...
Now, that's a story I've never heard.
We've done it
Wow.
for 2
Wow.
animal fighting cases that we had, where we suspected the guy was selling his, fighting dogs.
You don't have to go. You don't have to go. A judge don't have to sign on.
So if they decide, if I reach out to Facebook and say, hey, I'm interested in Billy. I want some information on him. I suspect that he's been involved with illegal activity X, Y, and Z, and I suspect he's using Facebook to communicate with people that are buying stuff from him. Would you be able to send me chat logs between this date and this date for these 2 individuals? And Facebook could tell you to go kick sand, and then that's when you have to go to a judge and get a warrant for it. But 9 times out of 10, Facebook says, here you go. Here's all the information. We're happy to help you, officer, is also the other thing. And
Zuckerberg is where he's at because he is being propped up.
yeah, and
Alarm
as great as
bells.
Well, look how much
Well,
money.
after that-
Look how much money that he puts into politics. Like, I mean, they put tons of money into, and
well, there's the talk that he's a lizard, really.
Well, yeah, I mean, he very well could be.
He's got his little heat rock.
the liberals figured out way back. You control the education system, and you control social media. You control the people.
Yeah.
They figured that out. And filled the education system from top to bottom with, progressive thinking people. And
That's a Marxism playbook, by the way.
well,
But
yeah.
There it is.
Absolutely.
Well, that's what I like to catch him on. When a lot of people bring up systematic racism, I said, okay, so you believe there's systematic racism. Well, let's dive into that. All the systems in this country, the major systems, the government for the most part, the institutions, the school system, the media, Hollywood, all those systems were all ran by the Democrats. So if there's systematic racism, then you need to look no further for the people you vote for who are implementing these policies that are keeping you down. Just open your minds up. That's what we want people to do.
We need from the public school system, and I've said this ever since my feet landed
Abolish
here.
it.
Abolish it? No, because we need it, but we need to develop critical thinkers, and that's all we need to do. Critical thinking, which is freedom of choice and freedom of thought, is the path that we need to follow. Anything other than that, or anything that corrupts that, is agenda driven.
Well, critical, but you can't control people that critically think.
Roger that, you can't.
So why teach somebody to be a thinker if you're wanting to make sure you hold control over them? Because if you create thinkers, you lose control.
Why are you trying to control them?
I'm not.
There we go. Because you shouldn't be. This isn't a control game. This is a humanity game.
Well, if they appointed the four of us to be in charge of the Department of Education, I think things would be very well for the future of this country. But then you get people like, I don't know who the current one is, if it's still Betsy DeVos or if it's someone, whoever's in charge there, they're not unfortunately not people like, the four of us here. They're career politicians. They're climbing the ladder because they're seeking power for themselves at a higher level. And they could tell you all that they want, they're doing it. Oh, thank you. They could tell you all that they want, that they're working in the system to, help as many people as possible. But at the end of the day, if I came up to them and said, like, oh, hey, you're the Secretary of Education, my child's having problems in this school, they're just going to look at me and say, get away from me, peasant. Or better yet, their security detail is going to say, no, you're good.
The Department of Education in this country has a SWAT team.
Mm-hmm.
Can anybody explain to me, within reason, why the Department of Education needs a SWAT team?
Or why the FDA needs one.
Why can they not just pick up the phone and call one of the other 100 alphabet boys they have out there?
Have you got your bleeper button ready again? Because here it comes. What the fuck has the federal government got to do with education? It was not under their pretext when it comes to the founding documents as to this is one of the areas that they should be involved in. They have very limited control of what they should be doing. And let me tell you now, federal government in education is not a good thing.
No.
We've also seen that certain elements of education coming from the state, when it comes to Northam and some of his dictates that came down, was the biggest pile of horse shit on the planet. So
Lord Blackface may have been the worst politician I encountered.
Oh,
That's
my
saying something
Jesus.
as a former man from New Jersey under
yeah.
Governor Christie when he was in charge.
man, there's
up
a
there.
can of worms I've opened.
You
They
mean
can stay in
Fidel
office.
Castro's illegitimate son?
Yeah.
I'm
they-
just saying, look at the photos side by side. It's
My
hard.
wife has done it, and I was just
And
like,
there is
holy
a photo of his
shit.
mother beside Castro in Cuba, and Castro is holding Trudeau up. Look at the side by sides. I mean, it could be true. It could
Here we
not
go,
be true.
Billy.
But
Facebook fact checkers, I've checked this. It's correct, so you don't even need to step in here. But they can wear the blackest shoe polish on the planet, and still be in charge of places. But Joe Rogan can quote something, read a quote that was somebody else said it, and get canceled and lose all of his
well,
platforms.
this is a game they play.
Yeah, and you know what? Rogan, let's be honest, like over this whole COVID thing,
I don't listen to his show, but I just laughed at
me
the
neither. I don't listen.
controversy.
But the facts have changed.
Amos doesn't even listen to this podcast.
The facts there has never been a fact to COVID.
Yeah.
Lord Fauci just spewed dumbness.
His
and
name
pe-
is Science, and he prefers it to...
Yeah, whatever.
Don't even get me going on this one.
But
Because
I mean,
you're going to be bleeping
you know-
the out of me.
so they went after
don't bleep.
they went after Rogan, and honestly, everything he said was nothing was false.
Well, he didn't say anything. He just had people on that they disagreed with,
Yep.
and he told people that he got the medications that were prescribed to him by a doctor. He just told them what the medications were. And it's dissenting voices. They don't want to hear anybody that's going to say anything or put anybody on a pedestal that goes against the
narrative. Absolutely.
I read something the other day where, we all know, I'm assuming, who Nostradamus was.
Oh, absolutely.
Predict the future. Someone said that Alex Jones is just him reincarnated.
Oh,
but
dear.
It's happening in modern society. Because he said enough things that have come true where we've all been like, you're insane. And now it's like, he's been kind of right with a lot of this stuff. So,
well, now
do you think Nostradamus got kind of the same rap, however long
Look
ago
at the Russian collusion that's come out. And now all of a sudden, by the way,
the laptops resurfaced.
that was, it's all of a sudden it's true and
never mind.
Move along.
It's over.
The science
Hell
has
no.
changed, which means the
But
polling
a
data
SWAT
has
team
changed.
can go bust down what's his name, Trump's guy's door in the middle of the night.
Roger Stone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The SWAT team can go bust down his door, but yet it comes out that have they busted down the Clinton's door? Have they busted down?
And talk about the
Anybody that
luck
was
when
on
Roger
Jeffrey
Stone
Epstein's
was
flight
hauled into
log.
custody. Talk about the luck. CNN just happened to be there with a
Yeah.
camera and a reporter right there on scene.
Oh, of
as
course.
if
In the middle of the night.
as if they never knew it was going to happen.
It's kabuki theater. It's all it is at the end of the day.
I mean, thankfully, the Emperor definitely has been seen to be wearing no clothes. I think every educated person on the planet, if they can't figure this out, are part of the problem. And that's where we are.
Well, a lot of them don't want to figure it out. What the last 2 years has given people an opportunity is to be virtuous and make virtue just everything that they live for. You have given a badge to people to walk around and scream at other people for not wearing a mask, and it makes them feel good, like they're a part of a solution, and they just completely ignore just their basic instincts and reality in general in itself.
Out wearing a mask that on the package you took it out of, it says this mask does not keep you from getting a virus.
And all these things have been, you can go on the CDC's website and see where all these retractions have basically come from, and basically them going back and forth, and they go back and forth constantly, but the people who, these Karens out here, they refuse to acknowledge. It's easier to fool somebody than convince them they've been fooled, and they just don't want to own up to it, I believe. And I mean, look, COVID was the worst thing to happen, according to them, for the last 2.5 years. It has been the most miserable shit show of my lifetime. And where has it been in 4 weeks? Nowhere, because all of a sudden, all anybody talks about is Ukraine and Russia, who, whether you want to acknowledge it or not,
are you opening that can of worms?
We are funding literal neo-Nazis in Ukraine, who are the grandchildren of actual Nazis who moved to Ukraine to try and keep the ball rolling, like a third of the battalion or whatever it is.
The Azov battalion,
yes.
yeah.
Did we not learn our lessons with Mujahideen back in the 80s? Now we are funding, neo-Nazis in Ukraine. And look, think what you want, and I know this is... I mean, we stand up for the Ukrainian people. Where in the hell are y'all at for Yemen? Where in the hell are you at for Saudis?
No, where are we at for the Texans?
Yes, there you go.
Where are we at for the people on the border?
Yes.
Where are we at for
We're
the people
sending
in our
our
own
border
communities?
people to Ukraine. Joe Biden came out and said, please, anybody that works on our border patrol would like to volunteer to go to Ukraine, please go. Why are you pulling people from our borders?
Well, I do feel like, the one thing it does give me hope is, I mean, for 20 years we tried to chase a bunch of cave dwellers out of Tora Bora and didn't make it happen. So I feel like we're pretty safe in the Appalachian Mountains.
Well,
yeah, absolutely.
Don't think that's because they didn't want it to happen. They have bin Laden in their sights many a times. Let's not forget bin Laden was an agent. He was a CIA asset back in the late 70s, early 80s.
I mean, he was interviewed by...
yes, he was.
What's his name?
It's a convenient pause.
Did a big night show.
Larry King?
No.
Dan Rather?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, one of them interviewed Saddam back in the early 90s.
Maybe
too.
it was Dan Rather and Saddam.
Yeah, I don't think nobody ever got up to
But we
bin
could have got
Laden.
them both right then.
Yeah, they can't find them at CNN can. And I mean, does
CNN even have anybody that's on air anymore?
Oh, by the way,
Well, they
just
lost
here
90%
comes
of
a
their
little
viewership.
bit.
They all got in trouble for little children. And
Here
stuff.
comes something that chaps my ass with
love that
the
statement.
school board. It's just another thing that chaps my ass. The school board and the Franklin County High School seem fit to pump CNN as a background message throughout their government classes.
Mm-hmm.
Let's wake up here.
When was the last time
That is not healthy.
When was the last time you went through an airport?
I-
Every TV in there, CNN.
Yeah.
They have a
I'm not saying
contract.
Fox News would be any
I
better.
don't know if they have
but...
a contract anymore, but they did have a contract. That's why it was in there. And that's what people come up and say, oh, well, you're just a Fox News. No, they're both crap.
Yeah,
They're all
Roger that.
crap. You know, don't.
I will
don't,
laugh
don't,
at Tucker Carlson saying that Michael Jackson came back and he just puts up a photo of Nancy Pelosi, though.
But that Tucker Carlson makes me laugh. So
Well, you know why Tucker Carlson gets away with the stuff he does? Is because he doesn't have sponsors.
Yeah.
So he's beholden to nobody. At least he's good on some things.
Yeah.
He's good, I don't like him on everything.
he
but
makes you think.
But he's one of the few people out there in big time news that actually questions the wars. He's one of the
willing to
few
say you're
people
full
that
of
came
shit
back
to
and
your
said,
face,
you know what?
essentially.
I beat the war drum for Iraq, and I was completely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, why were we there? I can answer those same questions. Why were we there? Weapons of mass destruction, my ass.
Let's not talk about biolabs and who was funding what in Ukraine.
I mean,
Oops. The
Are you
US
suggesting a country would invade someone over the threat of WMDs, sir?
There we go. Oops, Bush.
well, I mean, General Wesley Clark even came out with it, and he's told people about this. He's on record as saying it. He said, after 9/11, he was presented. He, went back to the Pentagon and met some buddies, and come up to him and said, "Hey, man," he said, "we're going to war." And he's like,
Yeah.
"Going to Afghanistan?" He's like, "No, we're going to Iraq." And Wesley Clark was like, "What? What do you mean Iraq?" Or whatever. A couple weeks later, he comes back again and said, here's the outline. Here it is. Like, we have plans to invade
seven
and take
countries
over
in
and
7
topple
years or
7 countries in 7 years, and at least 5 of them I think we did. Like, it was Iraq, Afghanistan,
Libya,
maybe Libya,
Syria.
Somalia.
And
What's there to topple in Somalia?
so,
A UN mission?
Yeah, I mean,
so
Still
I mean,
going on?
Saddam was a ruthless dictator, whatever. But is
was
Iraq
also-
any better now than they were with him running it?
they're a whole lot worse.
He was also a member of the Ba'ath Party, and the Ba'ath Party's origins stem back to, dare I say it, Nazi Germany.
Well,
What's
Interesting concept.
They had the de-Baathification process, just like they had the denazification process. And I guess it works better in Europe than it does in the Middle East when you kick everyone out of their job.
History repeating itself, and there we come back to history. What a concept.
well, if you really think about it, probably every single problem we have in the world today, and forgive me for this, Simon, can probably be dated back to the British Empire. And the British Empire
Damn
did
it.
one hell of a job of just going up through the Middle East after World War II, and just carving it up into different
World War I for Sykes-Picot Agreement,
different
where
borders, and which made no sense whatsoever. So you have Shia and you have Sunnis all mixed up. Like the dichotomy of Middle Eastern politics and how things operated.
Look at Africa.
It's ridiculous.
Look at
I mean, I don't-
Rhodesia.
I don't blame. I mean, I don't blame.
God bless the Rhodesians.
I don't blame England as much as I blame the Catholic Church.
Oh, there's
Ooh,
another.
Here we go. You
I
can make
mean,
some people
Listen,
zesty with that comment.
you're supposed to be the epitome of religion. I mean, they have killed more people than any country there is. I mean, the
The
Catholic,
Spanish Inquisition.
ruthless, and you're, oh what? Hey, listen, I came from all my conclusions pure. I was raised German Baptist. We never had a radio, never had a TV. I mean, we had electricity, the basics of life. I'm in the middle of 8 kids. My dad was a maintenance man. Hey, he's making great money. Mom was obviously stay-at-home mom, homeschooled us, raised our gardens. We had our farm, cows, goats, everything. When I left the church, I mean, and I knew when I got to the point where I was going, when I decided, listen, I'm out of this religion, because original politics are religion, and there's more politics in religion than in politics.
Oh, yeah, there are.
Yeah.
But I knew that everybody that I called a friend, I knew when I made that choice, that's over. I got to go find friends. So now I'm a worldly man. I knew nothing about politics. So I literally, I had to learn. I'm gonna be a worldly guy. I'm not going back to the church. I'm gonna be a worldly man. All right, so I need to know about I need to know the difference between a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian. I need to know. I didn't know nothing about none of it. My parents never voted. I mean, my granddaddy went to prison for refusing to go fight in World War II. And then they figured out, let's not imprison them. Let's send them somewhere and make them work for free for 2 years while mama takes care of the kids in the middle of a mountain farm. And so instead of sending them to prison, we get 2 years of free labor out of these guys.
Say that's another argument. I have a bunch of friends that are former, prison guards, and they've all come to the idea now. They're libertarians or anarchists. They 100% support prison abolition because, in their opinion, I don't fully agree with them on this, but in their opinion, stuff like that, where hey, you're going to go make big rocks into small rocks for the next 2 years, or you're going to make license plates, or you're going to go build roads for the county
because you won't go to Europe and fight in a war. But anyway, so
yeah, sorry.
I have, I literally came at everything with a blank slate. From where where my political beliefs were, or well, it really ain't political beliefs. It's, what do you believe in?
Yeah. Your morals.
And which is a fairly unique spot to be in. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's the reason Billy likes to give me so much hell. But I feel like that I had no parents saying we're Republican, we're liberal, I never seen any of that. So I came up with my own, all right, here's where I stand.
That belief system. And incidentally, you happen to be clearly yards ahead in one of the most righteous people I know.
Well, I feel like it can all boil down to one thing. Doing to others, you'd have others doing to you.
Amen.
That is all you got. I mean, I read the Bible. Growing up, Bible. You can read that Bible a million times, and every parable, every story is one thing. Mm-hmm. And that's where in society now, it's no we left. It's me. What can I do to look better? The next election, and once we forgot we forgot everything.
Mm-hmm. But it's, you don't go to, the local butcher and then to go to the local grocer to get your groceries, and then you don't go to the local dry cleaner. You go to Walmart, or you go to, as I call it, Shitty Kitty Food Lion. I don't know what y'all got.
Big box store. Yeah. Absolutely.
You go to the big box store and you see, the son of the guy that was the butcher his entire life, and, who made a living off of it, and now his son is following his trade, but he's getting paid, what, $12, $14 an hour, maybe if he's lucky.
But in all honesty, that goes right back to the government being in control of everything. Mm-hmm. It's easier for the government to control Walmart, one company. I have a farm. Mm-hmm. My brother was a butcher for 13 years. I had a butcher shop, does amazing butcher work. We have all our own butcher equipment. Mm-hmm. Legit Hobart. Yeah. Legit. I can't sell you meat. I go to jail for that. I can't sell
Here's
him.
my air quotes being entered.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that goes back to the government being in control.
I just gave Amos a very big wink there for people that are listening.
Because both of y'all have meat.
Can you send me a pamphlet that tells you what kind of animals you grow on your property, and then you give me a free sample of meat, but I'll pay you $60 for this pamphlet? Does that sound like a good...
Yeah, and like the...
There's another wink.
Yeah.
I've never paid Amos for meat. I just come up here and pay him for his advice.
Yeah.
And
there
then,
we go.
And
I pay him to be my
as a
friend.
consolation prize, he hands me a quarter of a cow. It's...
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually, and I went back a good few years ago now, and I still recount my little village in England where you had two fantastic butchers. There was a fishmonger, and I went actually up to fairly recently into Edinburgh, Scotland, and there was a cheesemonger. Okay, so these little entities that are specialising, and you're paying top dollar for it. we need to get away from the facts and the corporate greed of the meat department in Kroger, the meat department in Walmart. These big box stores have crushed this industry that was based on quality and have replaced it with mediocrity. And there's the tragedy. And unfortunately, the general population has, and here comes the carrot and the stick element to this concept, has fallen for cheap food and poor quality. And we need to get away from this in a very big way, and we need to reject this corporate greed and encourage our relationships with local farmers and be able to do it without the wrath of the FDA and big ag sticking it to us. And I would encourage everyone to develop a relationship with your local farmers, whether it's buying farm fresh eggs or a share or a quarter share in half a side of beef, a quarter side of beef, a lamb, herd shares. Why am I, and I've said this so many times, why am I buying milk from California? You have got to be, here comes a bleep, you've got to be fucking kidding me. Right? The dairy farms have been hit with the co-op greed, and as the producer, the middleman has been marginalized for market share and the margin of profit, and it's disgraceful how it's happened. And I would just everyone get out with your local farmers, your farmers markets, support these people that produce quality.
Well, these are the conversations that need to be had, and mainly being is when you start talking about reducing these stupid federal regulations on everything. The first thing these alarmists will start screaming is, "Well, I mean, what happens if somebody sells you a cow that's diseased or something? You get sick or this or this or this." How many times do you turn on the TV and say that Walmart or Kroger or any of these big places are having recalls on something for E. coli or recalls on something for salmonella? It happens all the time with the government. Yes, it happens all the time with the government. So you know what? If it happens to your local farmer, if it happens to the guy that you've been buying from for years and years, you know where he lives. You can go up and you can sell it in the courts, in your local court, and say, "Hey, you sold me this meat. I got sick," and you make an end of it. But they make it seem like, oh, if the government wasn't there to protect all these things, then you would end up getting sick and dead from raw milk or meat. No, they just want their cut of the pie.
How does E. coli end up being in some of the fresh produce with salad greens and so forth? And I'll tell you how it happens, is the greed when it comes down to providing the workforce that has to pick these elements. They don't have portaloos. And I'm not going to single out a nationality because, you know, you can figure it out yourselves. These people are put in the fields and they are, you know, given their 10 or 12 hours a day to pick a certain crop. If they take a toilet break in a portaloo that probably hasn't been provided, guess what they're doing? They're going to shit in the field, they're going to piss in the field, they're going to piss on the crop. And this is how E. coli gets into this corporate greed food chain. So let's not, you know, be under any illusion here. We are going to have to pay more for our quality produce than what we are being presented from these corporate FDA, big ag, food industries that basically are poisoning us.
But I don't think that's necessarily paying more for the produce. I don't think that's necessarily true, because if you put it back to basics, and everybody went and visited the people that had gardens and was selling produce on the stands. You know, a lot of that stuff is not going to happen because you're not going to get a
With
batch
small
of bad
farms.
beef because I know you.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm not going to,
A diseased
I'm not gonna sell it
cow's
to you.
going to get buried on the farm. It isn't going to get put in the food chain.
I mean, let's be honest. In relation to that, Simon was going to buy a bunch of hay. He buys hay from me.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to buy a bunch of hay from me. Square baled it.
This is an example.
Yes.
This is just a hypothetical.
Right.
Because Simon definitely doesn't buy hay from you.
Yes, he does.
And the government
on
doesn't
a technicality, I don't.
Okay,
It
but
just arrives and
So,
send a donation in.
You just the alarm bells are going off in RS headquarters
not-
right now.
It's not even
oh,
a
a
tip.
dollar was made somewhere without us being involved?
after he done hauled the hay up here, I found
Hypothetically, hold that hay up.
I found permillomin in it, which will kill animals.
Yep.
I called him up. I was like, don't feed that hay. Don't pay me for the hay. Don't feed the hay. It's bad hay. When you're working with somebody that you know,
You have
that's
a
what happens.
You have a relationship with a farmer, and this is where we should be getting back to our communities with the relationships that we have with our producers.
That's what has to happen.
Whether that is down to proteins in the form of meat, whether it be chicken, pig, or lamb, or if it comes down to feed produce, or even down to vegetables. Is it Buckner's up on 122? But it's still a farm side store that you can drive up to. You know,
you interact with the people that picked it.
Exactly. Let's develop this relationship rather than go into these big bloody box stores where you've got no idea, number one, what's gone into the animal, the quality of the animal, because we know the FDA is a bunch of lying toe rags.
And the produce has been drove all the way across the United States. The trailer's been juiced up with gas to keep them nice till it gets here.
It's how
and we can't
has it
figure
been
out
frozen?
why we're having medical problems.
And it's difficult. We understand this. It's difficult if you're somebody, whether you're either a family or maybe a single parent, and you're trying to feed your kids right and stuff. We know if you're working during the day and you have soccer games or this on Saturday, it's difficult to make it out to these produce stands because you have all this convenience of a big box store. We understand that. But the more people that put forth that extra little bit of effort to support your local people, to not go and shop at these big box stores, the less relevant they become, the more reliant we are on our community, and eventually those prices will go down.
The more
The more
I think I posted this on my Instagram last night. It's a quote. I'm ripping it off from Fight Club entirely. So give the writer of Fight Club his due. But we're working jobs, 5-6 days out of the week, to get money that we don't have to afford to pay for things that we don't need. I don't need an Xbox. I don't need, the latest thing that's come out of Apple or whatever. But if I was shopping locally, living entirely locally, I wouldn't have a need for any of that. The only reason I work at my current job, I have a mortgage
With
to pay,
government.
because we all rent our land. But that's a whole other discussion. If I didn't have to pay for my mortgage, or if that's all I had to do, and inflation hadn't made a $30,000 house be a $200,000 house over the time, I would be able to go to the farmer's market once a week to go get all the produce I need. I'd be able to go to Amos and say, hey, I'd like to buy some meat from you. My family has a half cow that we're looking at getting. But instead now, your convenience of, hey, I have to work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, or whatever it is, because I know, like you with the on-the-road truck driver, Billy, you probably don't have conventional hours.
But don't we think the red tape of government is...
Well, right.
I mean,
that's what I'm saying is we spend
changed it
all
all.
day where in previous...
we're conditioned
Yeah,
for this to be our way of life.
yeah, and that's
it's
not
the
what we were
Matrix.
meant to be.
It's bad conditioning.
Yeah, it's the Matrix.
Wake the fuck up, people.
Yeah. Just
There's no
stop.
reason you should be working, 50 weeks out of the year, Monday through Friday, just to be able to say, hey, I took a 3-day vacation in the middle of that year. Like, are you really living, or, are you just tax cattle at that point? You're living to pay something higher than
we're debt slaves.
Exactly.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. I nearly dropped the F-bomb there. Did you hear that? That was a close one. But if you don't think you're a debt slave to this shit,
Don't pay your taxes on your property for 2 years.
don't do that.
The,
God forbid.
There's a gentleman that I work with, and I won't say his name, but if he listens to the podcast, he'll know I'm talking about him. But I found out back in November, or maybe it was December, that he works every single day, Monday through Friday. He never calls out sick unless he gets severely injured on the job, which you drop a 200-pound block on your foot, you're going to take a day off. Doesn't have running water, doesn't have electricity, basically lives in a shack on a mountain. And, he works his 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, or even comes in on weekend days to work just to get a little bit of money so he can put food on the table for his kids, make sure that they have, clothes that aren't rags, essentially. I made a big, long rant about this, but, he comes in every single day with a smile on his face. I'm like, hey, B, how you doing, man? He's just like, I'm good, man. Smiles, and he's just happy as another day. But at the end of the day, I know it's not because of anything he's doing wrong. Like, I've asked him, like, hey, do you have a drug problem? This is just the former cop in me, just trying to figure out where people have been put on hard times so bad. It's like, no, I just grew up poor, and I'm still poor. So in Appalachia, it's a generational thing, unfortunately. But we're still being, having our hard-earned income sucked out of us by the state, the federal government. If you live in town, you're also paying county and town taxes for some reason. Which
you, as a contractor, have to get a separate license just to operate within Rocky Mount town
Every
limits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm a licensed Class A contractor.
That's extortion.
And
That's
if
extortion.
I do it inside the town limits of Rocky Mount, I have to pay them a fee. If I go to Roanoke, city of Roanoke, I have to pay them a fee. So,
Franklin County, you have to pay them
No.
a fee. Roanoke County.
the counties, you're covered under your, it's unreal.
I'd love to see an accounting. I'd love to see an accounting to where our tax dollars that we are aware of is going. Where is our tax dollars when it comes to our fuel bill? Where's that being apportioned? Where's it going to? Where's our sales tax money? How much is that? Where does it go to? We know full well that the system is absolutely broken.
And loaded with waste.
Last paycheck, I pulled in 91 hours total. That's for 2 weeks, and I did. We had that snowstorm the other weekend, so I went out and I was salting a couple of the properties, so I got paid overtime plus snow pay, which was really nice to look at. Then I was looking at my paycheck, and sure as hell they stole $400 from me, and I'm just sitting there thinking, I was out here, sweating my backside off all day long, pushing this 80-pound thing up and down a hill, and then I was hanging off the back of a pickup truck loading up a salt spreader while it was blizzard conditions out there. I didn't see a single government employee on the back of that truck with me. I didn't see a single government employee pushing anything up the hill with me. Where were y'all? What, I really would like to know, because that's $400 that I could spend on a lot of other things other than funding your lazy
But never
asses.
fear. Once you're 70 years old, they're going to give you that $400 back a little bit each month.
I don't expect to live that long, to be honest. But I expect never to see Social Security.
Oh, that'll never happen.
Yeah. So.
And my aunt, I got an aunt, 73 years old.
Virginia May.
Bless her
She's a
heart.
legend.
I love
This
her.
woman is unbelievable.
He has to hear the story. We told it on the show before. We did, I think, on the original.
She's 73 years old. She has worked every day her whole life, but not a public job. Did house cleaning for people, did this. She's 73 years old. She gets $180 a month in Social Security.
How generous of them.
Isn't that unbelievable?
I mean, that might get her enough gas to drive from here to Rocky Mount 2 or 3 times.
I'm thinking, there is nothing fair about, somebody that's got 8 kids by 8 different dudes that's drawing in $6,000 a month that has never, ever even had a job.
Yep.
And then,
It's
here
great.
she is at $180 a month.
Well, think of it.
It's obscene.
How would your employer feel? I mean, I don't know if any of you guys are in a union, so maybe that's how that works. I don't.
Hell no.
Yeah, but how would your employer feel if you came up to him and said, "Hey, we all took a vote. We're all getting a pay raise today," because that's what Congress does. We don't get a say in that. Congress can just vote on giving themselves a pay raise. What have they done for the past few years? Did they stimulate the economy? Did they allow you to go outside and enjoy anything, or were you locked up for the past 2 years in your house? Was it?
Well, I wasn't,
was it
but most Americans was.
I
Not
never
even
took.
most, just
I never took a PCR test. I never contracted COVID, and this, up until last January, I was working in public safety, so I didn't wear a mask, even though I was told to. Sorry, Colonel Katz.
I mean, I may have had it. If I had it,
But if
You
someone
brushed
asked me
it
to
off.
put one
Yep.
on, I'd wear it. But at the end of the day, I didn't change up how I was living. I didn't contract this stuff, but at the same time, I still was forced to be a prisoner because, oh, hey, I want to go out and get a taco. Oh, no, sorry. You have to sit outside at this outdoor taco. You couldn't even sit at their outdoor table. They had to build a separate wood section in the street for you to sit because, for some reason, you only get COVID if you're sitting an extra 4 feet from the door. Yeah. Or, so I lied. I wore a mask when my girlfriend and I went to Asheville last September. First time I've been there.
Oh, but that's Asheville, North Carolina,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it is.
Oh,
And
hallelujah.
I got told she went to the bathroom at one of these places, and I stood up to just to adjust my jacket or whatever, and they said, "Oh, sir, if you're standing, you have to have your mask on." I said, "Oh, so you're telling me COVID only hits at less than 5 feet?"
I mean, the madness behind this. That bleep button.
I don't have a bleep button.
I've got Tourette's.
I mean,
Okay.
but let's be honest. This whole entire, this whole entire mess with COVID, it was just a test to see how fast we can control the population. That's how I feel about
How
it.
far they can push it.
You know, I
These
think
are
you're
our
right.
opinions.
A perfect example
Yes.
of that is
I mean, that's just my opinion.
What happened in Virginia specifically? What happened? What was it? March or April when they finally locked down the state? What happened 2.5-3 months before that? 50,000 gun owners arrived in the Capitol to say, "You're not going to pass this gun control law." And it was the most peaceful protest the state has ever seen. We picked up every single piece of trash we could.
Yep.
We
Let's
had a couple
mention
people
Hong
that
Kong
slapped
was
some.
protesting at the time.
Yeah.
The French, of all people, were protesting. The
Suit
French
de
are
law.
really good at protesting themselves. Now, granted, they throw up that
love to
white
burn down
flag
that
quicker
city.
than you ever could if there's actually something going on outside of them. But the French, I mean, they're feisty.
Didn't they show up to help us beat?
Oh, don't. Come on,
No.
now.
We can get into some good Revolutionary War history topics now about them.
Suit the law.
But at the end of the day,
What are your true thoughts on the French, Simon?
Oh, man, the bleep button. Here it comes.
Not
say
the Irish,
assholes.
the French.
Oh, no, I love the Irish.
thank you.
Love the Irish. Always have. I believe in a united Ireland. The French, quite frankly, they can go fuck themselves. They have been a nation
Simon, tell us how you really feel.
that England has been at war with for centuries, and quite frankly, I have never seen a reason why we should have stopped. And there I have it.
Oh my god!
That's a winner. By the way, I just want to note something here. I'm drinking something that's Franklin County's finest. It's moonshine, and it's peanut butter and jelly. And when you take a sip,
Henry Law.
when you
Is
take
it?
a sip and you inhale, you can taste the peanut butter, and when you exhale, you can taste the jelly. Now, I think that's absolute genius at work.
That's wild.
And
man.
I salute the person who created it. It's absolute genius.
Let's think about Franklin County. Dating back to even the bootlegging days, and even before that. I mean, it's
That's the Irish
people
coming
around,
out of it.
People around here are they're
And the
built
Scots.
differently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Never drink with a Scot, by the way. And I'm going to give the US another tip. Don't ever drink with a Scotsman. Don't ever fight the Russians.
Especially in
Because
winter.
you will lose both. Simple as that.
It's amazing. It's amazing how quickly it's all went from sugar to shit.
Well,
Well, they lost their cash cow, Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So now they got to find a new enemy. What was it? Colin Powell died the other year, and I saw something. Someone said
COVID got him.
Yeah, no, he died. He died right after Afghanistan collapsed, and somebody said most people when their significant other passes, don't last too long, and he saw the love of his life, the war in Afghanistan, go away. So,
I mean,
don't mean to speak ill of the dead,
remarkable.
but fuck him.
It's just it's remarkable, and and look, and that's the mental gymnastics a lot of these people will try and put you through when you want to make a reasonable argument about things, and I'll say something to the degree of, look, we don't have no business being in Ukraine right now. That's not our priority. That shouldn't be anything we have to concern. Oh, well, you just support Putin. No, how about this? I hate our government. I hate Russia's government. I hate the Ukrainian government. I will stand up for the free citizens who want to go about their day, but don't paint me into a box or paint me into a corner because you can't understand that they're all corrupted asshats. Every single one of them down the line. It doesn't matter. They're all sending innocent, young, like the best men in their country to die over, as George Carlin would put it, a bunch of prick waving.
Well, let's put that into a little bit of perspective as well, with Pelosi's offspring, John Kerry's offspring, Joe Biden's offspring. There's one other that I'm missing. All have significant dealings.
Mitt Romney.
Mitt Romney. That was the big one.
He's such a great guy.
Yeah, just.
I mean, for all y'all
super.
out there that think we're just all a bunch of Republican
They-
dumpsters,
they all-
love Mitt Romney.
They all have
And-
significant dealings with
Mitch
Ukraine.
McConnell, too. Oh, he's such a...
Oh, Mitch McConnell can go suck a big one.
The best thing I've been able to do, my little part of my helping in the war on disinformation on the internet is every time I see somebody, saying, oh, we need to go over and fight the Russians in Ukraine, is like, hey, here's their contract for how to volunteer. Put your money where your mouth is. I'm not going to send a single one of my family members to go over to Russia or go over to Ukraine to die for Raytheon in Russia. But if if you're really feeling that patriotic vibration coming out of Kiev or however they say it nowadays, go
Kiev.
and volunteer. Go and volunteer.
And if you care about human rights and freedom and all this kind of stuff so much, then where are you at on Yemen?
Yeah.
Well,
Back to our country. Where you at on our
China?
border?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But still, even that's too simple. That's too easy. The rest of it, where are you at on these things? Why is it that you all of a sudden care about human life when it's Ukraine? But, you cared about the Kurds for about 2 weeks.
They were up in arms when the Russians bombed that hospital a week ago, but they didn't even bat an eye when the U.S. drone struck the MSF hospital in Pakistan.
The hypocrisy.
Well, it's despicable when you consider that NATO has encroached like a Pac-Man across Eastern Europe with a promise that was made with the fall
By George
of the
Bush.
by
Yes.
George Bush.
Yep.
Yes.
And
We will never move an inch closer. NATO will never move an inch closer towards Russia.
and that is the Republican progressive that we are both touching on. When you see the march east from NATO and the historic buffer zone between east and west, you better wake the fuck up and consider who you think is the good guy in what's going on in Ukraine. And what's going on in Ukraine is an absolute tragedy. And I will say that from the get-go, it's a tragedy. But don't think that our hands are not bathed in that blood.
Oh, yeah.
For everyone that thinks that, oh, hey, we should institute a no-fly zone because it's not going to, it'll calm things down. That doesn't mean all the sides got together and agreed, hey, we're not going to fly over here. That means NATO and American jets specifically are going to go shoot down Russian jets, and that's saying we're going to go and have an armed conflict with the only other nuclear superpower on the planet, who in a second can launch their weapons because they have what's called launch on warning, and it doesn't take a nuke coming
That's
from
Robo.
America.
Russia has a system set up that like the final solution or whatever, if nobody
The
pushes
dead man switch.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it is.
dead
Yeah.
man switch.
I'm writing an article about it for one of my friends. What a situation like this spiraling out of control can look like. And all it takes is one American drone getting shot down that they think, oh, hey, that's a fighter jet that's coming to bomb our troops, or an artillery round landing in Poland, and then Poland saying, we've been attacked, we need to go to war. Why should Appalachians go to war if Luxembourg decides, hey, we want to go to war with someone today? What's the sense in that? What of our freedoms are being taken away? If the Europeans want to have a war, let them have a war. They have one every
80 years.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't say that out loud.
Isn't that like
That's
the
not my
80-year
accent.
thing? And you talk about listening to Tim Pool quite a bit, and I do too every day. And I can't document it exactly, but there's just like a thing that's like a theory about every 80 years. You had the American Revolution in 1776. 80 years later, you had the Civil War. 80 years later, you had World War II.
Yep.
Now we're about to encroach again on the next 80 years where something just off that crazy.
It's cyclical, and guess what? It comes back to knowing your history and not repeating it twice.
And all the stuff that's going on now. So, the government for the last 5 years has made up every lie in the book on how Russia's the bad guy. And this. All right, so if I spent the last 5 years of my life making up a lie about everything just to, push my agenda,
Narrative.
I don't even know the truth.
If you want the best example of what I think everything looks like with this Russia is, you guys are old enough to have probably seen this movie. It's called Canadian Bacon. You never
I
seen
remember it.
I was a
I
donkey.
it was Michael Moore before he went crazy.
You just used an ethnic slur.
No, I'm German Baptist. I can do it.
So you can say the GB word.
So, but
You can say the D word.
so for those of you who don't know, the Cold War is
John
over.
Candy's
Russia,
last
yeah,
film. I never watched it.
Russia is
Oh,
no longer an enemy, but all the military industrial facilities in the U.S. are closing down. All the arms factories are closing down. The president's really unpopular, and then all of his advisors say, well, if you get us into a conflict with another nation, that usually will get you a second term. So they manufacture Canada to become the new Soviet Union. And it's probably still one of my favorite. I watched it a couple weeks ago again, and it's they'll sit there and they'll spout something about they'll be watching a drone camera of a missile hitting a truck or a building, and you hear someone say, "Oh, and that was the terrorist headquarters." Like, no, that was a hospital. But that's not important. And they continue on. And I watched it as a kid growing up, and I didn't really understand it. I thought it was kind of a funny movie. But now that I'm an adult and I spout all this stuff, I'm like, oh man, this is a painful
Really hits
movie. Yeah.
Makes you think.
The analogy that I've used with this over the last several years is that we're in a free-hand Texas Hold'em game, and by that I'm referring to the three superpowers that remain at the so-called table: Russia, China, and the US. Now, in a three-hole Texas poker hand, what your sole objective is to get rid of the weakest player. Mm-hmm. And that can present itself in a number of ways. Now, the Berlin Wall falling was a potential to get rid of Russia as one of the superpowers. We're in that Texas Hold'em game right now, and there are three superpowers at the table, and potentially there's going to be two.
And them two's already talked about
I was
it.
going to say, do you foresee this country being one of those two, though? With how everything's been over the past, not even 2 years, but the last 18 months.
Potentially, we are holding the weakest hand.
Well, it depends on what your metrics are.
Absolutely.
Economically speaking, yes, Russia's got like the GDP of Italy, and they're a massive country land-wise. We still economically have the upper hand on Russia, but who knows what kind of support they're going to be seeing from the Chinese, or what other support they're going to be seeing from other countries at this point in time. And
alliances are made or broken,
but it's all about perception as well. So if you're looking at it from an economic standpoint, yes, we still crush Russia as of right now.
And that Chinese
but
concrete
if you
that
look
breaks
at
up
it,
in your hand when
if
you
you
pick
look
it
at
up.
it from a perspective of weakness or strength, I mean, as a veteran, a combat veteran, I can probably assure you that Russia right now isn't going through, their soldiers aren't going through like sensitivity training and walking around in high heel
Well,
shoes.
you've seen the recruiting commercial come out of them where they got guys jumping out of planes and firing missiles at tanks, and then someone put the American Army recruiting commercial next to where I've got nothing against gay people, but I don't really think you need to be saying, "Hey, join the U.S. Army." These were my two moms, by the way. Like, you're not supposed. I'm not a big supporter of the military nowadays. Like, I support the troops, but I support them in the way that I think we should bring them all home.
Well, I support the troops up until a point. I mean, eventually, if you stay in long enough, you're going to be playing the game.
Yeah, you get above a certain rank, you're a politician over. You're not there for your guys anymore. You're there for your own being.
Exactly.
The Pentagon is there for McDonnell Douglas, Raytheon, and
The United States of Raytheon.
And it goes back to your sexual orientation should not matter. It has nothing to do with your combat ability, and people and gay people should look at this as a sign of disrespect to them. It's like they're using you as fodder.
Exactly.
They're using your open-mindedness as a recruiting tool. Yeah, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what sexual orientation you are. Come on in here and kill people in the name of bankers.
Mm-hmm.
And that should not be the way. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're gay or straight, but when you start focusing on identity politics, and your military isn't supposed to be about identity politics. It's supposed to be about the right number of people, no matter who they are, that are willing to go in there and get the job done and defend your homeland. Going to Iraq, going to Afghanistan, that's not defending our homeland. Going to Ukraine, Somalia, that is not defending our homeland.
Our moral path is lost.
I support the idea of our troops, and I love them to death.
Absolutely.
But I do not support what is, eventually when you start getting to the higher levels of it, the brass, I don't support the decisions.
Mm-hmm.
We need a military. We need people here to defend. We need people willing to step up and have it as coordinated. You need a coordination. But they're turning the military into a social experiment right now.
It's a job works
And I'm
program.
sorry. I'm sorry. Like, you don't need people coming into the military with an uneasy attitude or not really sure of who they are or what. You need people who are focused.
But
Stop.
No matter what, it should be the best person for the job. And that's lost all across the board because the government has said, all right, if you're this bigger company, you have to employ this many minorities or this many of this or this many of that. And that's not getting the best.
Never has been.
I'm a high school dropout. I could have never, I would have never, on paperwork, I wouldn't even be looked at for 99% of the jobs that come available in American. I've never filled out a resume.
Mm-hmm.
No, nothing.
You built the best houses in Franklin County.
So you're probably a lot more successful than me, and I got a college associate's degree.
But I didn't have a student loan.
See, I only had $2,000 to pay for that, thankfully. Because my girlfriend went to tech, and I'm not ready to take on that responsibility. Sorry, darling.
I just feel like that it's all,
I hear you.
They have, they gin up this perspective, and everybody's got to follow it. Mm-hmm. If you're not a doctor, you're not a lawyer, you ain't crap.
Yeah.
That is not a good. You can't work like that. A good society does not work like that.
I read a report this past year that came out, and it was commissioned by Congress, and it was, I think, a retired Navy admiral and a retired Marine Corps general, and they were asked to look into what's going on in the Navy, because there's all those instances over the past 3 or 4 years where ships in the 7th Fleet, the fleet that's in the Pacific Ocean, have been ramming into one another or just hitting civilian ships.
I see his wheels turning.
So
you're talking about the sea life.
Then there was the helicopter aircraft carrier that burned at the dock last summer, the Bonhomme Richard, however you say it. It's named after a ship that John Paul Jones stole from here a lot. Sorry, I had to get that digging.
Shocking.
But their report came back, and they said across the board the Navy is more concerned about woke policies, pushing progressive policies than they are with their day-to-day warfighting capabilities. Commanders in the military, in the Navy specifically in this report, have neglected their warfighting capabilities in order to check the box saying all my troops have attended this sexual harassment training. And they even came to the conclusion at the very end of this report that if the U.S. Navy was to get into a conflict with a near-peer rival, we will lose that conflict badly. But, at least you had your sexual harassment training and,
It looked good on paper.
Johnny.
It looked good on paper.
Yeah.
And I'm a former merchant mariner, so and a yacht captain. So I'm a seafarer.
We've got podcasts lined up at the Yin Yang just dedicated to those stories. We can't even.
I've got some stories that yes, there's a podcast at least on those alone, and for destroyers, U.S. Navy vessels to be involved in any collision, which seems to be prolific over the last, let's say, decade.
Yeah.
Is inexcusable.
Right.
I mean, there's a level of incompetence there that, quite frankly, blows my mind. A mid-sea collision, whether in a navigable
Did you not see him
waterway,
coming from 50 miles away.
well, even with a navigable waterway, and with all your electronics, it's inconceivable. So we've got an issue there to start with. The U.S. military, across the board, needs to get rid of this PC shit. We want door kickers. We want aggressive people in aggressive roles doing aggressive jobs. That results in loss of life, and it sucks. But it shouldn't be ours.
Right.
So if you're in a fight, you better be fighting to win it.
Exactly.
And this PC shit has got to get thrown out the damn window, and these cocksucking generals in the Pentagon need to get the fuck out of the way, because they have no business.
Come on, talk
running.
dirty to me. This is my bread and butter, man.
Oh yeah, I bet you're loving this.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just getting wound
Yeah,
up.
be careful
and
over here, gentlemen.
I'm blaming.
Have another sandwich.
I probably need another sip of that peanut butter and jelly brown stuff.
Well, it also kind of goes back what Amos was talking about a few minutes ago about the best person for the job not getting the job, and
I don't care what you are.
That's a
I
perfect
don't
expression.
care. If you're a good person, you're right for the job. Boom. If I'm working with somebody, I ain't got to like my boss. If I'm making good money and everything's running smooth, I don't care what you are, who you are.
Give me your credentials.
That's right.
Exactly.
Give me your credentials.
If,
Give me
I'm,
your
if,
track
if I'm
record.
the baddest there is, give it to me.
Yep.
Don't give it to me because I'm 6'4" and white and can't dance.
But can you jump?
Well, I mean,
Yes.
give us the right person.
but let's not hang on. Let's be
Very
very
specific
let's be very
reference for the
careful here
audience.
that we can be seen round this table in this cabin. That's an Appalachian cabin in the Appalachian Mountains. That there's 4 white guys dissing on minorities. We're absolutely not here. We are promoting
Free thought.
free thought,
Equal opportunity.
but equal opportunity. And when I say equal opportunity, I'm not saying loaded opportunity. I'm saying equal opportunity. And your credentials count, not the colour of your skin. And we're not a bunch of, white supremacists sat round a table here, jawboning about, the inadequacies of how we've been persecuted as white people. That's horseshit. We want credibility, and we want the best person for the job, and that doesn't mean that you can exclude anyone. Everyone has some skin in the game, and everyone has their credentials, and it doesn't matter about skin or religion,
Creed or color.
or
It don't
creed or
matter.
colour.
Orientation, none of it.
So
None of it
don't, let's not mistake, because I know where there's going to be certain people who are going to be listening to this going, man, we got a bunch of white supremacist KKK guys sat up in a log cabin in the mountains of Appalachia, ranting and raving about how downtrodden they've been. That is not the case.
So,
That is far from the case.
I can one, that'd be really funny if it was the case, because I actually have black family members, so I'm sure that they would love to hear that, for some reason I don't like them all of a sudden.
But let's be very clear about that, because I know that we will be painted in that narrative of a bunch of goose-stepping, swastika-waving white supremacists.
Well, it's because they don't want to challenge our ideas and our beliefs. They just want to throw ad hominem insults at us and don't want to actually come up here and challenge our ideas.
Well,
if you can't challenge our ideas and challenge our, then you're just going to throw mud against the wall. That's all you're going to do.
That's why I don't believe that systemic racism. Ain't no such thing. It's
a class issue.
I have
It's
never
class.
hated you because you were a different nationality than me. Not anybody. I have never met somebody, and the first thing that went through my mind was, hey, that's an Asian, or that's a Latino, or that's a black person, and I can't like you. I mean, you don't do that. I mean, humans don't do a few. All right, so let's be honest. There's a few here and there but there's no such thing as just a massive, broad amount of systemic racism.
There's that classical liberal mindset of, you don't see color of people. I'm not saying that, oh, hey, I'm blind, everyone's white in my head. It's like, no, I see, a person, I see their skin, but I don't judge them based on their skin color. I say, all right, hey, let's look at who you are as a person. Can you hold the same moral compass that I hold, basically?
There we go.
And if you can't hold that, I'm not going to think that you're a piece of shit because you have a different skin color than me. I'm going to think you're a piece of shit because you're a piece of shit. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Truth is what it
Very
is.
simple.
Yeah.
It's very basic, drawn down.
And that's honesty.
But
We've lost the ability to have that honest conversation.
Divide and conquer.
And the divisiveness has been driven. That wedge has been driven not by us. Okay, let's look at the mainstream media when it comes to this division and divisivism. I mean, I don't know where to go from there.
Here's a good idea for you then. So I don't have. See, people who follow my Instagram may have gotten this opinion of me the other day, and I apologize if that's what you did. But I was sitting at work and they had the TV up, and it was Apple TV, and it was Denzel Washington with a crown on his face, and I love Denzel Washington. I think he's a great actor. But it was said Denzel Washington.
He's a good person too.
Said what?
He was Macbeth in this Apple TV show. So I just took a photo of it and said, I don't remember, Macbeth being in this direction. Just as I was laughing at it. But
I do have a comment.
Okay, so all these people were going off saying, oh hey, why can't you do this as a good actor? But I realized that there's other stuff, like they're making Anne Boleyn, I think, and it's going to be a black actress. In the new Vikings Valhalla show, there's a traditional white male Viking that is now a black female. And I don't have a problem with the actor or actress who hands a script and said, yeah, sure, I'll try this. Good on them. But I do realize that it's coming from someone above them in Hollywood. But part of me wonders, is it them trying to force diversity upon America? Or is it them saying, here's another thing for these people to argue about and not pay attention to us? Sending $14 billion to
or $10 billion
to actual neo-Nazis
to
in Ukraine.
to Pakistani gender studies.
Well, I'll be a little bit more brutal than that, because I can, and that's what I do. That is cultural kidnapping. Okay, so what's good for thee isn't necessarily good for me. And when I see a person of colour representing a Shakespearean actor,
a traditionally 11th, what was it? It was the 11th century, and it was a Scottish general.
Absolutely.
Historically, what do you think of? When
so
you think
if we flip that narrative, how abhorrent would that be to the black community? If we flip that narrative,
if you had George Clooney going in and playing Nelson Mandela or Booker T. Washington,
exactly.
Yes.
The argument that they're making, though, and I understand certain people's point of view because I have a very liberal family and I have also a very conservative family, so I'm able to sit on the sideline and look at both sides of this argument. Their argument is that Macbeth's his skin color or the character himself is never fully alluded to, and he's a made-up character at the end of the day. So why are you being upset? It's like I said, I'm not upset at Denzel. I'm upset at the bigger picture of what are you trying to do by this? I'm not.
Yeah. Well,
James Earl Jones made a great rendition of King Lear back in the 90s, and I think that's a one-off because at the same time they weren't trying to take historically white characters like, white people who we knew that were historically white, like Anne Boleyn, and saying, oh, hey, this is who it is now. It's disingenuous, I think, at the end of the day.
Extremely. You would, if we had
Shaka Zulu
Cleopatra,
yeah.
I think historically, with some of the characters that have played her role, they have made her look Egyptian-ish. And, rightly or wrongly, you can throw the blackface at it with Northam and that comparison. But they are looking to represent the cultural perspective of her character through the colour of her skin. So as soon as you divert away from that and blatantly put in a character of an ethnic skin colour that does not represent the character that they're looking to portray, I'd say that's more than disingenuous.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not knocking Denzel Washington at all. He supports the troops. I have a great respect for Denzel Washington as a person. I have an enormous respect for Denzel Washington as an actor. I think he's one of the greatest actors that this nation has on the current stage. But let's not get away from the fact that by him portraying that character in a Shakespearean film, because it's no longer a stage play, I think that is ethnically incorrect.
Right.
And that's all there is to it. I mean, there's no fucking argument other than that. So,
like you said perfectly, if you took a traditional, tale from Africa or story from Africa of, a warrior or a general or a king, and you said, okay, hey, we're going to find Mark Wahlberg and we're going to have him dress up and play this character now, how would the African-American community...
Well, absolutely.
They'd lose their minds, and
African-American,
rightfully so. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To be like, look, this is revisionist history. It's absurd.
Michael Caine cannot perform the character of Kunta Kinte. I mean, come
nor
on.
should he be asked to.
So, and nor should he be asked to, and nor should he accept the role.
Right.
So, I think the creative element of him taking that role on is a challenge to start with. Is it morally correct? Absolutely not. Particularly under this ethnic environment of divisive politics.
I mean, I just really think every bit of it boils down to the divide and conquer. I got to convince you to not like these people.
Well, like you said, they do it just to get people talking about it.
Diversion.
Yes.
We spent now 20 minutes talking about this, and I was really brought here to talk about something else entirely. So it's a perfect example of what they're actually doing to us. And,
and I mean, it's by design. You can't like him. You can't like, it's by design to try to make everybody not like each other. And most people ain't smart enough to look through it.
Well, they aren't, because they just they're so. And for anybody interested, Simon finally
Jesus Christ!
he just finally he popped the seal finally. How?
I was looking.
We were 2 hours and 17 minutes into this conversation. And
I didn't even make it to the start of the podcast.
No, I mean that's an Englishman for you right there.
Yeah.
Hey, but I mean, these are good conversations to have, and the crap part about it is people could come through here for this show and take out little small snippets and
Every
little clips
podcast.
of it.
Man,
They'll take little snips of it and they'll say, "Oh, look at this! Listen to this! These people are racist for this reason." No, not at all. You have to listen to the full context, and the full context is be who you are. And be proud of who you are. It doesn't matter where you came from, what color your skin is, what you decide to do with your life. But if you're good to your neighbor and you take care of your neighbor and everybody follows by that guideline, then we're all a better off society. I don't care.
I'll-
I don't care as long as you're a good person and your best interest is your family and my best interest is my family, and we can both collude and collide and make both of our families better. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your religion
It don't
is,
matter.
where you came from, nothing. None of that stuff. It all gets put aside. We have got to stop. Like, we've got to get out of our own way. We have got to get out of our own way. And that's to everybody out there. Everybody.
Here's something I was toying with the other day, and I could be wrong on it, but so my girlfriend, she loves doing her ancestry stuff. She's mostly Scottish. She found out that
She ain't done a 23andMe or something and put that shit on the damn database.
government employees, they already have our blood for some
yeah.
reason, man. But so she did that years ago.
Too late.
I mean, hey, if they make a clone of her, hopefully she comes over. Don't listen to that, darling. But we were talking about like the clan society of Scotland. How, granted, they had plenty of issues of their own.
Yeah, I saw your post on that, the
yeah.
Clan Society. I was thinking, people are going to think he's a Clan member.
Yeah, and no, I'm talking about
Clan with a C.
Yeah, it was in two ends.
Simon immediately jumped in on that. Scottish, he knew.
Yeah, but
Just like the original middle finger. Me and Simon had that John conversation one day.
the V. But so I was talking about it with her and said, if I had, the entire valley I live in, let's say it's 500 acres. Let's say that was all my land. I would immediately go out to my family, my extended family, and my friends and their families and say, hey, I have this much land. If you guys want to, quit whatever you're doing, come and build a house on my land.
No, you wouldn't.
Well, I mean, let's say 5,000 acres. 500 acres, a little close for some of us. But at the end of the day, I'm not afraid of inviting my family to come down and say, hey, I've got some land that y'all can stay on if you want to build a house on it. At the end of the day, though, it's not going to be a free ride. You're going to have to do some work to help me pay off some of the, the taxes that come from, the crown up above. But it's not, oh, hey, I'm getting a bunch of, white people with the same last name as me together. I'm saying, hey, all of my family, black, brown, Hispanic, Latino, whatever, Asian, doesn't matter whatsoever.
Come put in your workload. Come put in your workload.
And I think that's what people, mistake when they see people like me saying, hey, we should, look back upon the familial unit. We should look back upon, localism. I'm not saying I want to just be stuck in my family and then everyone will make an incest comment, because that's what people think of, unfortunately, for mountain folk. I'm not saying that. I'm saying come here, live together as a family. Even if you're not my immediate family, if you're a good friend of mine, I still consider you my family.
Family's not blood.
Exactly. So come on down. We'll build a better society together, because sure, we all moved out on our own, but we're all still working
Didn't they
a
try that in
9 to
Indiana?
5.
Socialism.
I'm not saying for that either. I'm just saying,
But you're not allowed to do that,
yeah.
because you have 500 acres. And you say, all right, I want my family to come. You build a house. The government says, oh no, you can't do that. So you need to cut this corner off and deed it to this family member, because you can't have two houses on the same chunk of land. So now, instead of you being able to have 500 acres tax exempt through agriculture, this person has something zoned R1. We get a good tax rate for that. So instead of having 500 acres of ag, now they're drawing 6, 8 R1 tax levels.
Yep. So
I mean, that's the way it works.
So like we were,
That's exactly what's going on right here, right now, on this property with my main residence, this farm, and my in-laws.
like we were talking about it, before we started recording, is every interaction with law enforcement can lead to a death sentence from you. Do this every time you interact with law enforcement. Let me rephrase that. It's not, hey, please do this. It's do this or else. If I say, Simon, you're going to pay your taxes today, and you tell me to go F off,
I probably would.
Yeah, which that's the mindset I love.
You could dodge 3,500 feet per second.
You could say that, and it's like, okay, the tax collectors from the IRS or from the county is going to come out and say, here's your bill, by the way, sir. You have to pay it by, the 3rd. And you tell him, piss off. And he does.
Sign the gate.
Well, the next person that's going to show up is the sheriff, who's going to say, hey, you have court this date. And you say, no, I don't. I'm not going to show up. So whatever
It
he says.
escalates.
He says, I'll see you there. You fail to show up. A judge issues a capus for your arrest. They come to arrest you and say, all right, Simon, you come with me. And you say, no. Well, that's called resistance. And they'll start struggling with you. And I don't like being detained. So, I'm sorry. It may
I wouldn't recommend it for me either. Just saying.
To get a little spicy, it may end in a shootout. And you know what? If I die free, I die free.
Janet Reno, how this ends.
So, So I think the key to society with, like what you were just saying about with how they want to break up your property and all these little tax plots is mass noncompliance. If you say no, you have to get people locally in law enforcement, I believe, that are going to back your end of that and say, okay, hey, I'm not going to Smokey's farm over there because I have 6 deputies. He's got 500 family members and all of them got firearms, and I'm not going to go and evict him from his land.
That concept actually is it's an intriguing concept.
It's a little spicy for some people out there.
It is very spicy because it is the height of non-compliance.
Mm-hmm.
But in Franklin County, I have a very great respect for our sheriff,
right,
Sheriff Overton. And I say that because he supported a number of policies that Franklin County Militia was
Local patriots.
and they are patriots. This isn't a bunch of goose stepping swastika.
It's people that want to defend their communities.
These are constitutional militia members, and Sheriff Overton very correctly supports their cause on the basis of we're constitutional militia, and they're looking to support the community, and we know that our community is under threat. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, our board of supervisors has inadvertently fallen for a con game from a Georgetown something Inc. blah 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 that represents themselves as something completely else, as constitutional reformists or supporters or whatever the hell ever. However, he understands the concept of patriots with a constitutional duty, and I think as a resident of Franklin County, it is our duty to uphold certain constitutional rights, and him coming out supporting those is a fair indication that he's anticipating some problems with law enforcement in the not too distant future.
I mean, I can see that because I worked in Chesterfield. We had, I want to say, 800 police officers. We had the sheriff's office and we had the police office. But our sheriff, that sheriff, I should say, because it's not mine anymore. They're just a process server. They serve paperwork for the court. They guard the judges and they guard the jailhouse. It was the police department that were the on the ground officers going out enforcing everyday laws between.
But it's the sheriff actually holds the biggest clout.
Right. So in Chesterfield, what I was going to say is, while I was in law enforcement, I would have loved if my little animal control unit of 8 officers and 2 supervisors were put underneath the sheriff, because a lot of the stuff we ended up doing became people pleasing stuff because someone on high in the command staff for the police department with political ambition wanted this to go
appointment.
down.
I understand.
But one thing I noticed, and just so you don't think that I'm a one-off of, hey, this is a northern kid who came down to Virginia and joined the police department.
We won't say damn Yankee.
You can.
We won't say damn Yankee.
You can't, because your wife is probably going to be listening to this show.
Shit.
We'll have to figure out how far away her and I, used to live. But So the majority of the recruiters for Chesterfield Police go to upstate New York, Ohio, Massachusetts. And don't get me wrong, Chesterfield paid well. They were a good agency when I worked with them. I didn't personally see anything, that I would deem as corrupt. And, nowadays I could say I did because, I saw people get pulled over just for speeding or bad tags on their vehicle. But neither here nor there. They're bringing in people that aren't of that community. They're bringing in people from the north, from the Union to Dixie, to say, hey, you're going to go and enforce laws down here now. And sure, they're going to live down here, but they didn't grow up here. I didn't know, I ended up knowing people in my community that I ended up dealing with on a daily basis, but I didn't really know them because they couldn't say, oh, hey, Officer Decker, don't give me a ticket. I remember when, your mom would have me watch you growing up, and then you're like, all right, well, I kind of feel bad. Yeah. But, Floyd, Franklin counties, the smaller sheriff's office especially, you're having the majority of those officers being born, raised, live, and die in that community. And I think that gets back to what we're talking about with localism that's important.
And that localism is actually a key point when it comes to enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to, I know Franklin County has made themselves a 2A friendly sanctuary. The Board of Supervisors, unfortunately, was hoodwinked by a certain group. And here lies the crux of it. It is a Second Amendment constitutional right.
Mm-hmm.
And it isn't about bearing arms.
Right.
That's not what it's about. So anyone that wants to have that argument with me on that basis needs to go back and educate themselves,
mm-hmm.
right, and then come back to the table. But the sheriff, in his infinite wisdom, has seen the shortcomings, and when I say the shortcomings, I suspect, and I'm not putting words in his mouth by any means, I suspect that when the two police officers from Rocky Mount Police Department were arrested for their involvement in January the 6th,
I saw that recently.
Riots,
yeah.
and
or one of them he was convicted, I think, the other day.
Well,
Like that.
I'm not quite sure of the current status. However,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry.
what happened was that one of the individuals, and I have the utmost respect for law enforcement. They've got a shitty job in every way imaginable.
Mm.
He did something foolish. Okay, when it comes down to disobeying a court order
Mm-hmm.
with regards to buying firearms online after
Mm-hmm.
his arrest. Now
Okay.
that he will become answerable to. However, prior to that, the feds came in,
Mm-hmm.
raided him, removed his firearms. This is a police officer
Mhm,
of
yeah.
good standing, removed his firearms, and did not give the courtesy of informing the sheriff
Oh,
that this was happening.
yeah.
Now, this goes against all the protocols
Mhm.
and courtesy that the federal government operates under. And for them to do that,
If you're knocking around someone's backyard, you're supposed to let them know. That's how it was.
well, I mean, the sheriff
Mhm.
he's the big dick on the block.
That's what I mean. Is that if I'm a federal agent and I come to your county, I'm supposed to say, "Hey, I'm working on this
Absolutely.
case,"
Absolutely.
and really you should use local assets instead of
and
a
they
federal
didn't.
SWAT team.
They didn't. And I believe, and this is a personal opinion, I believe that Sheriff Overton realised the severity of that action in that he was completely overrun.
Yeah.
I think it goes against all protocols of law enforcement. I'm not supporting the officers that went into the Capitol and did whatever they did.
Right.
I'm not saying that was a good thing. It was a bad thing. It was seditious. No, it wasn't.
But they should get a fair shake.
But for the feds to come in and do what they did and not involve Sheriff Overton was a big slap in the face.
Yeah.
And I think it was a wake-up call.
Mm-hmm.
And he realises, and I don't want to put words in his mouth by any stretch at all, but it's quite clear that the overreach of federal law enforcement superseded the sheriff, and that is absolutely not how law enforcement works in this county or in any other county.
Well, that's not the way it's supposed to work.
Exactly. And therein lies the crux of that argument.
Mm-hmm.
They overstepped their bounds. Sheriff Overton got shafted.
Yeah.
And,
Embarrassed.
Embarrassed, humiliated.
Because then he has to answer all the questions of everyone in the community going, why did this happen?
How did this happen?
Yeah.
And there's only one answer. He got stonewalled.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not acceptable. A federal agency cannot behave in that fashion.
Though the last time it did something like that, it was in Texas.
Waco, Texas is not the
Ruby
fucking
Ridge
example.
Yeah.
Or Ruby Ridge. So we can all go down all those rabbit holes. But I think
I'm not saying that would have led to that.
not at all.
But
not at all. But
they didn't even. I'm a believer
that process
that Waco,
of law
Yeah.
was absolutely incorrect.
And it was all over really budgetary issues anyway for the ATF back then. But I'm a personal believer that if the ATF went to the sheriff of whichever county the Mount Carmel Branch Davidians were in and said, hey, we have a warrant for this gentleman's arrest or a search warrant for this reason. Would you be willing to serve it if we had a couple of agents there with you, but bring your deputies? Because you know the people living there at the end of the day. So, like you were saying, I talk a big game, but at the end of the day, if the sheriff or a deputy in Floyd County comes and knocks on my door, and especially someone I've seen multiple times, it's like, hey, this is what's going on. I'm going to talk to them, but if you roll onto my property with an armored vehicle and a SWAT
doing a
team,
no-knock raid.
That's how one of our members,
Good
Mr.
luck.
Duncan Lemp, got killed.
I mean, it's a tragedy, but these no-knock raids have to stop.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, like the Bundy boys.
Yeah.
They were on the way to talk to their local sheriff when, they were ambushed and shot.
And that was Washington State Police, too, that did that. So
It wasn't FBI that
no,
did
so I read a book. I'll find it so you guys can post it in the show notes, but it was a person that did he wrote an article about this quote-unquote show notes.
Oh, so professional. That was very professional. Oh, shit,
Like
man.
I will in our show notes. I will link like the Blackwater Building page, and my Facebook page here in the Harwell Grace Band. But
Get professional there, please.
So long story short, he talked about the standoff in Bunkerville at the initial time where the BLM came to take his father's cattle.
Right.
Then they talked a little bit about the sheriff's deputies who were shot at the pizzeria by the two.
you need to specify when you say BLM, because
Bureau of Land
yes,
Management.
yes,
Yeah, it's
because
not-
people that day were wearing like shirts that said like F the BLM, and the other BLM started losing their minds. Like, look at all these white racist assholes.
we're talking about
No,
the
it's
Bureau,
Bureau
of Land
Management. So I mean, that was.
So they talk about
what
that.
to do.
They talked about the two Las Vegas, I think it was Las Vegas sheriff's deputies that were shot in the head at a pizzeria, who they had nothing to do with it. The people that showed up and did that had nothing to do with the actual protest. They just believed all the hype online. We're like, we got to go do something. And then they talked about Mollier, I think is how you say the name of it. And they talked about the shooting of Lavoy Finicum, but it wasn't federal officers that did it. It was Washington State Police who were ordered by the governor of Washington, or I think it was Washington, or it may have been Oregon. One of those. It's all the left coast to me. But the governor had ordered them to detain everyone in that vehicle, or basically didn't say detain them or else. Basically said, you're going to stop everyone in that vehicle, and so that's how Mr. Finicum got shot, was by Washington State troopers, not by federal agency. But
in the name of
at the end of the day, it was in the name.
it.
It was in the name of
BLM.
yeah. The
Bureau of Land Management.
Bureau of Land Management.
Yeah, I mean, you got, and I've thought about this so many times.
Mm-hmm.
You got a dozen cowboys 1,000 miles from nowhere, holed up in a shack in the middle of winter, and that's more of a threat than people burning down police departments in
They're
the
mostly
middle.
peaceful riots.
Yeah, you know how.
Ukraine is a mostly peaceful
Yeah,
country.
and so
by
then
those
they shot Leroy or whatever. Well, he had a gun. Well, no shit.
I got a gun right now.
I mean, he's a cowboy.
I got several.
He's a cowboy in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Of course he's got a gun. That's a guarantee.
Yeah. It's the.
How is George Floyd, by the way, being painted as this fucking saint?
Well, he's not, because you saw the lightning struck his mural, and that was the only place it struck. He was Saint Floyd, and they
he's
literally
the only
electrocuted
person
him.
in the last 2 years that his cause of death wasn't COVID, even though he was.
Yeah,
had
it takes
COVID.
my breath away, man.
There's another one for the fucking ringer.
Sorry. I apologize.
I mean, it's just the whole George Floyd case was such a huge distraction, and now you see as the layers are being unfolded, there was another BLM activist, maybe up in New Jersey or something, who was just indicted on like fraud.
Now
Where
this,
they
is
were
Black,
taking
this,
all
is
their
Black
money.
Lives, this is Black Lives Matter.
Yes, we're switching around, and look, and
We're gonna
I get
confuse
the
everyone with this
concept.
jumping around.
I get the concept, but even the original founders of Black Lives Matter, I can't remember the dude's name, will come
I know
out
who
and
you're
tell
talking
you
about.
that the entire
It's a fraud.
it was all co-opted. By
It's
somebody,
fraud.
it was all co-opted. Yes, every bit of it. Like at the base core, yeah, I get your argument. We can sit down and we can have a conversation about it. You see my side, I see ours. But just like everything else in this country, the entire movement was co-opted by a bunch of
Gets hijacked.
by a bunch of cultural Marxists who were
Marxists.
sitting there and they were extorting money. All these donators out there, all these people who donated all this money because they thought they saw a great cause, and I get it. All your money was going to a bunch of frauds. That's all it was.
When they-
Didn't it go
That's
to
all it
Canada
was.
for 3 houses or something?
Either
I'll take it. I'll
multi-million
take it
dollar
a step
houses.
back, just one step back, just to have a snide comment. It was like all the Boston Irish, New York Irish supporting the IRA, and as soon as that became a terrorist organisation, those funds got stopped.
Yeah.
Funny that.
Yeah.
However, on a very important note, I don't think police officers shooting black guys that are unarmed in the back is
acceptable.
No,
acceptable.
but it's not
by
acceptable
any
whether it's a white
stretch.
guy or a black guy
Yeah.
or a Hispanic guy.
Absolutely.
It's not acceptable either way. It's not acceptable. And we all can understand this.
Yes, we,
We
can.
can all
The
understand
educated people and critical thinkers of this world absolutely agree. But don't get me wrong. This podcast now, with the topics that we've discussed, is
Taboo.
is taboo.
Wait.
Why is that? Why is it taboo? It shouldn't be. This is an honest conversation with rational, educated people.
Yes.
Full stop. Period.
And they'll find ways to dissect it and probably paint us all as white nationalists, racists, and all this.
Because we're all guilty of
because they
thought crime
can't
here.
come up in here and they cannot debate our ideas. They cannot sit here and come up like.
It's the best weapon that they have in their arsenal, because they don't have any any
That's the
stand. It's
first-
just
that's-
you're
that's-
just a racist if you think that
Yeah,
way. It's
you're
like-
just racist. You're a
and they
Nazi,
don't
you're a
have
bigot.
to elaborate on it or anything like that. It's just that's the end of the conversation. And
And the way
anything you say, even to defend yourself after that point, they're just going to hear a racist trying to make excuses. So.
And you know how to defeat that is anytime anybody calls you that or says that, just shrug your shoulders, say whatever. Going about your
Yeah.
business.
Man, it ain't
Because
gonna-
don't spend all
let it
day
even
on
affect you
Instagram like
because-
I'll do, arguing with one
Exactly.
person. It's
I mean,
bad for your mental
you
health.
Look at there's several instances where like black guys, that were conservative black people, Candace Owen, they go after her just as hard as they would if she was white.
Well, yeah, they say she's the she's the black face of white nationalists or something like that. That's what they paint anybody, and they do this on purpose. The they'll sit there and say, well, you're held down because you're this color, you're held down because you're this nationality, or you're held down because you're this sexual orientation. But if anybody in any of those categories ever was to speak out against the system, then the system will say, well, you're just an Uncle Tom, or you're just a traitor, you're just this, or you're just that. Then it's complete, like, let people have their own voice and have their own opinion without categorizing them based off something they have no control of. It's absurd.
Well, and here comes something that there was an article by, I think it was, I won't go into the article just yet, but the issue has been when it comes down to race, are you black? Okay, can we call you a black person? Can we call you a person of color? Can we call you? And it's got so confusing. We cannot call you whatever it may be, whatever terminology exists at the time. And it was very recently, so it was an educated black guy, man of colour, who made, I think, was a great statement. Now, whether he was from UVA or Virginia Tech, he said, let's stop messing around with the semantics of racism. I would sooner you call me a man of darker skin. And I thought that was a beautiful way of knocking this colour shit out of this conversation. Because if you call someone black, you're going to get demonised. If you call someone coloured, you're going to be demonised.
You can call them people of colour, though, apparently, nowadays.
If you call them people of colour now, you're going to get demonised. So, and that narrative has been projected, and it's constantly changing, so that whatever you do, you're going to be demonised. And I thought this guy of darker skin actually put that into a perfect perspective, because he said, refer to me as someone of darker skin. Now that colours, that puts the Asian, the Indian,
anyone that's not of Irish complexion like myself,
of not Caucasian, God forbid. I think that puts that in perspective, and I thought it was put beautifully.
I'm Appalachian American, so.
Well, and so am I, and proud of it. But I shouldn't be demonised by saying, because of my accent, and clearly don't think I might not be of coloured skin, because I could be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But someone of coloured skin, I thought that was a very, very polite way of putting it, where you can't be demonised. Mm-hmm. You know, and someone of darker skin, if you have to describe someone that way, is probably a really polite way of doing it. Mm-hmm. You know, without generalising, without marginalising, and without being demonised yourself. So, and I've got some great friends that are of darker skin. Mm-hmm. My daughter's godfather is of darker skin. He's from Sri Lanka.
Okay.
So don't call me the racist because I said black man, coloured, or whatever it may be that is the tone of the moment. Mm. I thought that was a really just nice way of putting it.
Well, they focus on the words of the language, and they use language to demonize, and they use language as a weapon, you know, and they completely ignore the fact that we're from, you know, America, as big as it is, we have multiple dialects, we have multiple ways of speaking, multiple ways.
Look who's at the table.
Exactly,
mm-hmm.
Exactly, and you know, kind of segueing off that, here we've been sitting for dang near 3 hours now, having the most fantastic conversation that we probably had on this show.
Felt like 40
and
minutes.
I know we haven't really touched on anything taboo yet. We really hadn't went.
Really?
Yeah. We haven't touched on anything taboo, so I kind of want to go into a spicy neck of the woods before we get off here. And and for the whole reason of this podcast. So, when I started the show, and for all its faults and for all the reasons that I dislike and disagree with social media and the conglomerate, big tech, trying to social engineer us and these things, I at the same time also have to understand that you have to also understand your enemy, and you also have to use those tools that are available to you to get out there and reach people. Mm-hmm. And the same goes for Brandon. When I started the show, I started going out there and I started following all kinds of Appalachia-themed pages and Appalachia-themed Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those kind of things, so I can interact with those kind of people, and those kind of people would listen to the show and maybe spread it around, and we would have a voice. And I come across his webpage, and at the time, I don't know what it is exactly right now. Is it the Republic?
The Republic of Appalachia.
Okay, it's the Republic of Appalachia is the name of the Instagram page.
Bravo.
And there's 12, 13,000 people that are following this page that are all seeing his memes, seeing his thoughts and everything, and they're commenting, they're liking. And I got to thinking about it. I was like, well, as a libertarian and an anarcho-capitalist, he's got this page called The State. When I found it was the state of Appalachia.
Yeah, there was a lot of people off at first.
I said, that's an interesting concept. So I started text messaging him, through, to this day I've never met him until right now. I said, kind of tell me a little bit about this. And it's fascinating. And secession is a very taboo topic.
We prefer the term national divorce these days.
Yeah, yes.
The science has changed.
When I hit y'all up, Simon and Amos, when I hit y'all up about this episode, I said, can we sit down and have a conversation on a podcast about a peaceful divorce?
My response was, Simon, are we breaking up? That was exactly what I said.
Like, no, we can't.
Simon knew exactly what I was talking about. His first response was something like, absolutely. Sorry for the beep again.
I thought I was getting a divorce.
I
talk about a peaceful divorce.
I hate to even think that dissolution of the union is even considered. Mm-hmm. And I say that not from a federalist purity point of view, but then again I do. If we revert back to the Federalist Papers and what the federal government was designed to do, I think we would be on a perfect track. I think states' rights, and we need to reclaim them rapidly before it comes to this. God, the irony from an Englishman saying this is just fucking madness.
Yeah, simply put.
I mean, but I love the concept. I've read the Federalist Papers. I understand.
You're more well read than most Americans, then.
The genius.
He's more American than most Americans I know.
That's what I've been able to pick up this evening.
Celebrate second place, Will.
Well, I do celebrate second place, and deservedly so. And I will say that again and
Which
again.
means he's going to now have to show up for the 4th of July party so you can back up.
Oh, absolutely, of course.
You have to make your way down from the mountain for that one. It's better fireworks show than a town can put on.
No, that's not second place 4th of July party. That's first place.
Oh, this is first place. I'm getting buried because it's my second place and everybody else's
better
first
fireworks,
place.
better food. They actually serve beer. I mean, it's...
But I don't.
We don't serve beer.
I don't.
Well, you bring beer.
I don't think that maybe putting ourselves in with West Virginia is a good idea. I think we need to.
I'll take West Virginia if they take Northern Virginia.
That's a fair trade.
Well,
I mean, you've got to give it, man.
That's not a bad trade.
At least, how about Southern West Virginia? At least
Joe Manchin will stand for something.
Do you mean more like Franklin County joining West Virginia as becoming a part of West Virginia?
Well, no, that whole secession argument.
Okay.
I think is problematic. Mm-hmm. And I know there's going to be people going, "You don't know what you're fucking talking about."
Yeah, my followers are burning the Instagram as we speak.
I'm sure they are. I know, I'm sure they are. But if we hold the federal government to the founding fathers' image of what the federal government should do,
a whole lot of people would lose their
shouldn't
jobs.
do, Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the issue of taxation, I think we would be. I think we would find an accommodation,
So, yeah.
and that's where I'm at.
Okay.
An accommodation can be found, but my thoughts, and this is another podcast entirely, is on personal taxation. I do have a thought on that.
Mhm.
It is radical.
Like personal property taxation.
Well, not necessarily personal property, but how I'm being taxed just to live where I live
Mhm.
is obscene and unconstitutional. But I have a cure for it. So every time that you come up with a proposal for severing your ties with the union,
Mhm.
I think what you've got to come up with is a proposal to maintain the ties with the union
Okay.
that revert back to the original intention of the founding fathers.
Mhm.
And that requires an addressing of taxation. And I do have a plan, and I do not want to be a politician. I will never be a politician. I will not involve myself in those nest of vipers ever.
Good.
So this is not me looking for public office. I won't do it. I will never do it because I think you're a bunch of cocksuckers.
Yes.
Amos, please don't hold back. I mean,
However-
Simon, please don't hold back.
Tell us how you really feel.
I think there is a method to stop cessation.
Mhm.
And I really hope there is, because we all pledge our allegiance to the flag.
Yes. So when we started off, this was 2019, I want to say. It was right when the last election occurred in Virginia, and the Democrats all claimed that they flipped Virginia blue. Well, no, you flipped Northern Virginia bluer than it was.
That's
But that's all
gerrymandering.
federal
Well,
government
yeah.
employees.
It's all
Yeah,
gerrymandering,
it's exactly-
so that's a new word in my expression, and I think it sucks dick too.
So I was with a group of people on Facebook of all places where we were all just ranting and raving about how, something needs to be done because they were talking about all these draconian measures. I made a speech to the Chesterfield Board of Supervisors about portions of it.
They didn't hear a word of it.
Oh no, they glazed over. One lady rolled her eyes during it.
They fell asleep, mate.
Yeah.
I know they did.
So the initial group for the state of Appalachia, we were talking about, hey, well, there's an entire portion of Virginia here that, we don't have a say in anything in the state.
Nothing.
The federal representatives for Virginia don't come from here. The majority of state legislators don't come from here. The governors, especially Northam at the time, Eastern Shore, daddy's boy that he was.
Don't
didn't
start
come
me
from
on
here.
that one.
Yeah, I still to this day hate Ralph Northam with all my heart, like any true Appalachian or Virginian should.
Right,
But so our initial talk was at the same time, Jim Justice, governor of West Virginia, made an offer to counties in the western part of Virginia
Caswell County,
where
where my wife was from.
Yeah, they were talking about
That's
it to
why he left.
to secede from the Commonwealth of Virginia and be annexed into the state of West Virginia. And we were talking about getting a movement together to try and push that. Well, then it very quickly became, there was probably 12 of us at the time in this quote unquote council that we had formed to discuss working towards this goal.
Basically, there's a bunch of guys hanging out their version of the wood shop.
Yeah, essentially.
It's like you, me, Garland.
But you know what?
James.
From
Simon.
small acorns,
Mm-hmm.
from small acorns grow fucking big oak trees.
That's true.
So I respect that too.
Also, I put forward the idea. I'll look at statistics, and I saw that, if you look at any voting map in Virginia, everything north of Fredericksburg is blue. Anything east of Richmond is blue. Anything west of Richmond is red. And West Virginia's having the same issue. They touch southwestern Pennsylvania where Pittsburgh is, and that entire northwest corner is becoming blue, and it's becoming a little bit more purple a little bit further down.
Yep.
You get closer to D.C. as well, down with that part of West Virginia.
In 10, 15, maybe 20 years' time, if they can hold it off that long, they're going to be in the same boat that Virginia hit in 2019, where the majority of their legislators are from urban areas that don't, live like the majority of people in their state, and they're going to try to pass laws that don't benefit anyone but themselves. So I said, why don't we try to make our own state? You know, not as an independent nation, but as a, you know, I
Break
said
away from Virginia,
Okay.
the same
A
as
voting block,
same,
like
okay.
a demographic.
So-
the same as West Virginia broke off from Virginia.
Exactly.
We'll be
70 years
Southern
ago.
Virginia.
yeah,
Yes.
that's where we came up with the idea of state of Appalachia.
Okay.
So my argument was we're not going to try and become the 51st state. We don't want to be the 51st state. We want to be the 54th state because you have the state of Jefferson in southern Oregon and northern California. You've got the Liberty State, which is the eastern half of Washington State, that wants to become their own state as well. So the main reason no states have been admitted to the Union recently, even though there's plenty of territories out there for them to do it, is the Senate doesn't want to become imbalanced. If they bring in a new state, is it going to be a blue state? Well,
Here comes the
Republicans don't
senator.
wanna- Yeah, you're going to.
Which is the DC argument.
Yeah, so they don't want to imbalance it. So my argument was, okay, we've got 3 territories right now, and then you've got 3 proto states. You've got Jefferson, Liberty, and quote unquote Appalachia. If you let the 6 of us in, 3 of them are already blue, 3 of them vote red, then you're still at a standoff in the Senate. But they don't want to share power at the end of the day. I know that. But
And isn't that bollocks?
well, it's a big club, and we're not in it.
No, but that's how the bollocks roll.
The sorry. So our idea was to form a 51st state or a 54th state or whatever. And that's where we started. If you go onto the stateofappalachia.com right now, you can see all of our stuff towards our statehood push, where we wanted to create chapters in every county that would go out and get signatures of people in the county to basically force their board of supervisors to vote on sending a delegate to a Congress of counties, which we would then say, okay, here's the amount of counties that say that they want to come with us. Let's say it's everyone west of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Okay, well, that's what our provisional map is going to look like. Then they're going to, work on building drafting a new state constitution. The whole legal works is what we're looking at.
And it's horrendous to be able to do that
Oh,
just purely on an administrative standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
with how you administratively deal with that
Oh yeah.
is designed against it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so according to
Every
the
design
Constitution,
is to keep that from
we
happening.
need to get permission from Richmond also.
Fuck
if we want-
Richmond.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. So back to what I was saying is, eventually the council of wise men that I somehow was thrown into whittled down to me by myself. Everyone else that was part of the upper group of this, one by one, backed out, and I had already started doing the social media on Twitter and Instagram. I got a flag made up for us, which I brought a flag for each of you guys. It's not our finished one. It's the runoff print that they gave me that was real bad. So as soon as I get my new ones, the correct ones, I'll get you guys.
flags.
I'll get you guys the replacement correct one. But I figure I didn't want to bring nothing with me today. We had T-shirts and stuff, but everyone else disappeared. It became me. So I was working on this.
It's hard work beating against it.
That plus starting up a homestead and
Yep.
working all the time. So back to what I was saying is, I'd much rather be able to sit on my sofa all day and type up stuff and work towards this goal. But so last summer I was sitting there and we realized, I realized my girlfriend was talking with me. It was that we went towards becoming our own state because we realized if we went the West Virginia route, we would be back where we are 10, 15, 20 years. We're just kicking the can down the road. Well, now, if we became our own state, sure, we'd have our own autonomy to a point, but we'd still be beholden to the current people that are in charge in
Richmond.
Washington. No, beyond that,
federal.
we became our own state.
Okay.
So that's why it became, we'd just be kicking the can down the road another 10, 20 years, because any time that we would make a policy that would actually benefit the people of Appalachia, well, the federal government come in and say, well, actually, this
Carrot and
is
stick.
illegal.
Carrot and stick.
Yeah. So
Motherfuckers.
there's more people in the U.S. today than at any time since the turn of since the beginning of the 1900s that support what we call balkanization, the peaceful doors. And I completely agree with you. I love fast food. I love pizza. I love Netflix. I realize that the likelihood of anything like this happening if the U.S. dissolved overnight into individual countries. The likelihood of me being able to say, oh, hey, you know what? I really want a pizza at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's going to go by the wayside, probably. Life becomes a lot harder for other
you can
people.
still think that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It might, and it might not. I mean, like, all of these,
I had a dream.
all of these shackles and all of these boundaries that we have, they are all arbitrary. If you just all take them away, nothing really has to go away. Most of it is just a mindset at the end of the day.
But,
You know,
So that's why we use the phrase national divorce, because, if you've got a couple that, realizes, hey, this isn't working out between us anymore, we're better on our own. It doesn't necessarily mean that you guys are going to be fist fighting over, who gets this chair or who gets that table. You can have divorces that go peacefully. My parents' one was an example, but that's why instead of saying a secession where everyone thinks of if you secede, it's a civil war all over again.
that's the immediate thought of Americans, and it's because of this public school indoctrination.
But
and maybe not to some degree, that's unfair. But when your first immediate thought is the Civil War being secession, and you think of bloodshed and all these terrible things happening, and you completely ignore 30 years ago the Soviet Union falling without a shot being fired, you're not being honest with yourself. You know what I mean? You can have this, and
California always threatens to leave when a Republican gets into office, and Texas always threatens to leave when a Democrat gets into office. And I say, both y'all friggin' leave. Why don't we leave too? We can do our own thing. I think we can do it better than is currently being done, because I agree with what you're saying, Simon, that, if, we work within the constitutional framework, if we're able to fix taxation and get policies in place that'll get us back towards those more libertarian roots that the nation was, I agree, that'd be an amazing thing. I mean, maybe I've just spent too much time on the internet, though. I don't see the country going that direction. I see them going further away from it.
Well, it's actually, to me, I consider it a very slow move. And I've been particularly involved with certain school board issues.
Shall not be named.
I mean, you can
Well,
name him because you can find him on the internet. Like he's actually an internet celebrity.
I don't care. I don't care.
He tracked down a BBC interview. Who else?
I mean,
I played it during the school board.
I'm not scared of calling a black person out to being a racist by any stretch.
Right.
I mean, it is what it is. So when that reality struck, I'm just like, no, I'm not going to let this slide.
Right.
My wife certainly supported me and was there when we did this expose at the school board against a particularly divisive, racist school board member that happened to be a Black Lives Matter activist. So, and she's now been removed from that school board. Funnily enough, by a white guy. And I now discover from her own mouth that what was the expression she used?
If you were born in Franklin.
I'm not worried about if you were born in Franklin County, you're all a bunch of racists. That wasn't the issue. The issue was that the position was created as a member at large, that you had to be a black person. Now, I found that absolutely fucking disgraceful.
Yeah.
And how dare someone impose that upon me?
Right.
And now we are now seen with the same circumstance with our Supreme Court justice selection, which now denies 93% of the population the potential to be considered, regardless of their colour, creed, or excellence.
I think you said it earlier, was the Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech, where he said, I have a dream where, white babies and black babies will be judged on the content of their character, not on the color of their skin. And what
how
are we
does
doing?
that backfire?
Yeah.
So
He's rolling in his grave.
That whole concept to me is important. It's what I will stand on.
Exactly.
Actually what I'll fight for.
Yeah.
So the secession argument I struggle with because I think we can fix the political environment that we're in to be compliant with what the founding fathers, in their genius, had in mind.
Could we say that? I mean, depending on how you interpret language, at this point in time, and as far as we have skewed off what we would consider a reasonable timeline, I mean, just a basic decentralization of the federal government and states' rights being re-implemented would be almost considered a secession at this point in time.
Yes, it would. And I think the resetting of the federal government boundaries back to how the forefathers perceived how the federal government would work would be a great reset. And I think there would be a lot of states that should welcome that because they've given it up. They've given up their states'
Autonomy,
rights,
yes.
and they've given up their autonomy through the carrot and stick mentality.
Well, through
And
almost blackmail.
that shit has to stop.
Well, through almost blackmail as well. I mean, when you look at something as simple as the age to buy alcohol, the federal government set an age at 21, and for states that didn't follow, they threatened to withhold like funding for roads and things like that. It's like,
Carrot and stick.
It's like you can send 18 and 17, 18, 19-year-olds overseas to fight a banker war and lose their leg, but they can't come home and buy beer until they're... No. If you're old enough to walk up to a bar and ask for a beer, you're old enough to get a beer. Like this arbitrary nonsense with... And that's Artist Bowling right there. I mean, this arbitrary nonsense, we have to get away from these guidelines and these rules and this tape following. And whether the state of Appalachia is idealistic or realistic or whatever, when you talk about something like that being a reality, the first thing people are going to go to, and this is such a natural instinct of humans, that's sad to some degree. It's their immediate reaction is always going to the worst. Oh my gosh, how's this going to happen? How's this going to look? People have survived for generations figuring things out fairly quickly. And yes, the state of Appalachia might have, some negatives against them.
I think it's
based
a state
off
of mind.
geography. But if people around here had more of a say, and I think that's the general idea of this region, from Charlottesville on west, essentially, for this region to just have their own voice and say, well, you know what? We would like these certain people to come in here and open up their businesses to better we started up, and you start deregulating, and you'd be surprised at the amount of enterprise that would come in here.
Well, they think that...
And in capitalist, not crony capitalism, because everybody wants to just rag, capitalism has failed. No, first off, capitalism is the greatest economic ideal that the world has ever seen. It has made more poor people like the poorest people in this country are fat off of McDonald's
Just
and
about
cell
to say
phones.
that.
Yes.
Are
you kidding me? Go to Sahara in Africa. Go to places in China, probably India, Iraq, where I've been at. You've been many of these places as a captain around the world.
I've driven through West Africa.
These
and
people,
I have seen poverty at its lowest level, and I thought it couldn't get lower until I drove across India.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dear Lord.
I've heard it's like, from what I've seen from stuff like watching like Top Gear stuff when they go there and they just have their camera rolling for beef footage, and just people that have been there, I've heard like it's some of the worst poverty conditions.
I've never seen poverty like it.
But hey, they just opened up the Amazon fulfillment center right up alongside all them shacks in that one village. You see that photo? It's this beacon on the hill next to a shanty.
It's
got to send Jeff Bezos back to space and hope his rocket doesn't make it.
On my trip.
Yeah.
Good times create soft men.
Mm-hmm.
And soft men create bad times.
Right.
And that's just what it boils down to.
And bad times create good men.
That's exactly right.
I dropped that quote in the Crawford and Power episode, and everybody thought I was they were pedestaling me up on.
Were you like,
Socrates
yes,
and
I am
Plato
the one
level.
that created
yes,
this
I was like, no. I was like, I just stole that off the internet for somewhere. I don't know who actually did that quote, but I've heard it multiple times. But it's solid and it makes
It is so true. I mean, like in American history, like the people that come out of depression, man, that's what held this country together until recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They know what bad times are.
And
But this area really didn't have even the depression. They wasn't bad times. I mean, they were just making liquor.
Well, hey, it's
yeah.
it's the Roaring '20s again. The economy's in the shitter. We're getting ready to go into more foreign wars in Europe, and we're having issues in the coal field. So maybe we'll get a Battle of Blair Mountain that occurs again.
Oh,
and
boy.
maybe it'll.
That's a whole other show.
Well,
That's a whole other show. My wife would love that.
For those of you that are part of the American public education system, Google that because I know for a fact they didn't teach you about.
Or don't
Battle of
Google
Blair
it.
Battle of
maybe
Blair
Brave
Mountain.
it.
Yeah,
Brave
yeah.
it.
Duck, duck, go.
No, don't go.
But
Well, now they
no,
started doing
no.
something now too.
there was
Yeah,
something
don't
really
go
bad
just
that came out of the Battle of Blair
use your Internet
Minions.
Explorer.
Yeah.
It was the first time America bombed, or an air raid took place on American soil, and it was the U.S.
And
government bombing Americans.
that's totally against the Constitution too.
Yeah, how dare you?
Oh, but the Russians bombing a hospital, we people just forget.
Well, people just forget that weapons of mass destruction was a lie, that babies in incubators was a lie, that the Gulf of Tonkin was a lie, that Pearl Harbor was just a random attack that they never saw coming was a lie.
Exactly.
As far back as print paper goes, as whispering in people's ear goes, propaganda has always dominated.
So
the day. Has always done it.
in 2022, what would happen if Sherman marched to the sea?
I mean, it would be put on Twitter and Facebook all
No,
over.
I mean that's war. I mean, dude, I'm saying the cops that was on Georgia. Think about Sherman marching to the sea, killing every man, woman, child, and every animal in the South from the Mississippi River east.
He's hailed as a hero.
Yes, he's a hero.
What a disgrace.
But
That's kind.
Wake
I mean,
up.
that's kind of what.
you think about that.
Wake up.
They didn't win the war. They choked the South into. They George Floyd the South.
If you think Sherman is a hero, why don't you look at his after-war actions
Well, that
where he
just
was in
was
charge of the
like-
military fighting Native Americans, who I know you are so happy to defend. Look at how him and Phil Sheridan used the U.S. military to crush the Paiutes, the Nez Perce, who had one of the best military engagements I think in U.S. history in the Indian Wars. Look at how any of these heroes of yours from the North were deployed against Native Americans and folk just trying to live in this, in the far West. And then we violated all treaty rights that we had made. with
Every
them.
one we ever
And we
made.
essentially put them in concentration camps. And then
To this
80
day.
years later, we did it to Japanese people. And when the Germans did it to someone else, we said, they're the terrible people. But we
And now
never
we're doing
would
it
do
to
such a
Dax
thing.
people. You know what I mean? It's a.
I mean that's what it is.
There's
Well,
certain,
the same things as trailer parks in rural areas. You know what I mean?
Every time a
let's
hurricane
all pile
hits,
them up here. Yeah, this is
Gets
this,
a trailer park.
Yes, here it is.
Yeah, but let's be
And-
honest. What
and-
we have done without trailer parks.
It's such a class issue.
But
Listen.
the news tells you to hate one another rather
Yeah,
than
we
if you
hate
get out there and talk
one
to
another for
somebody,
this or that. No,
yeah.
look, no,
So you
don't.
bringing up trailer parks. There's one way I know that God has a sense of humor.
Tornadoes, isn't it?
Every time, man.
What?
I'm attracted to you like a tornado to a
single
trailer
time
park.
a tornado goes through somewhere and they're on the news, it's a trailer park.
Well, that's perpetrated. They do that on purpose. They want to put that person on TV. They want to put the person on TV that's going to get the most views.
Like,
And especially in internet these days. Especially
like
internet.
at Martinsville, NASCAR race, they wanted to interview some fans, whatever, when everybody's walking out. As a whole group of us walk out, out of the whole group, guess who they pull aside to interview? Blake Webb.
Hey, I want podcasts like this to be about helping people understand to get around that nonsense, get around the programming, get around what you were taught and what you were made to believe in, like the state of Appalachia. I love the concept. I love the idea. I love that we can sit around and discuss it and think about potentials, because I think it would work. I think we come through here and we drop a bunch of regulations. We make it a touristy spot with mountains and hunting, and we can consolidate and make it a great place. We don't need Northern Virginia's money. But at the same time, understand and see Simon's.
We're
Simon's
supporting
side of
them.
it. Yeah, I see Simon's side of it to where there is a little bit of nostalgia into preserving what it is about America that makes America great. At the same time, you know what I mean. And I want to stand up for the people in Washington, or not Washington State, and I want to stand up for the people in New York and Texas and the southern border. But at the same time, I want us to both respect our different cultures, and we don't have to learn the same. We don't need to learn the same. We need to learn our own values and be able to appreciate our own culture. And that way we can also communicate with your culture and make it all better for all of us around, because our neighbor thriving makes us thrive. And it doesn't matter whether your neighbor is somebody next door on your farm or whether your neighbor is the next state or the next country. You all want the best for all of us.
Well, if you make your neighbor better, it makes you better.
Exactly. A
Well-
rising tide raises all ships.
Yes, indeed.
Me and Billy were talking about this
like
podcast,
that.
and we were talking about the subject. And I'm gonna tell you right now, like Billy's telling me, what he thinks. I mean, because I'm a realist. I just straight out, I'm a realist.
Right.
And Billy, I was like, that's just fucking stupid. That ain't fucking possible. No.
Yeah.
But the concept.
But after we've had the conversation, just like I told you earlier, by being able to conversate with people, we've sat here and had this conversation for the last longer than I imagined, probably.
Okay. I mean, the entire conversation's been going on for about 4 hours. We're recorded for 3 and 22 minutes.
Damn.
I'm fairly mind changed. Just the concept of processing it in my mind. Man, America's the. I mean, you can ask anybody that's not an American. America's the fucking best. I don't. There's. I don't like the idea of. Just trashing everything, because the course we're on right now, that's where we're headed anyway. But the, why isn't there more? Why is there only 51 states? Why shouldn't we have more?
Or why shouldn't we just have less?
Because we're not. Well,
why
we're
shouldn't we
not
have
the
less?
only region in the country where half of our state is 150% different. Now we are one of the very few states that joined DC.
Why should gerrymandering from the north of Virginia fuck every southern Virginian?
Yeah,
on
I
the planet?
seen the numbers. Somebody ran the numbers one time on the state of Virginia. If by town population, it would literally take 100% of the people in southwestern Virginia voting on the vote everybody the same way to negate all the federal employees that live in northern Virginia that vote the other way.
Alexandria.
Implants.
Yeah, they're only there
they don't have
because
the
the
same interest.
massive inflation of the federal government.
North of the Rappahannock is in Virginia anymore.
It's all. I mean, that's why Northern Virginia is.
Yeah, Southern Maryland, Northern Virginia should all conglomerate and
With
become part of
DC.
DC. Just become DC. It is, but you
But
know,
they're-
as it's stated so rationally, there's no such thing as blue states. There are only blue cities and red states.
Look at Roanoke.
Or Chicago, Illinois. Illinois is completely red, other than Chicago. New York, for the most part,
Yeah.
New York.
New
Other than
York
California,
State is New York City.
you take away San Francisco and Los Angeles, leave them San Diego. San Diego is a little more conservative. Like California, I mean, you take away the cities and
Look at Florida,
yes,
Miami, but most of the state is cattle
The
country.
only part,
But look how
Surprisingly.
the biggest
many
rednecks I've ever
immigrants.
met in my life came out of Florida.
where the term cracker
they're-
came from.
stories
Billy.
come out of Florida.
Jesus.
Look how many
That was from
immigrants
Whips.
are down from New York, New Jersey, wherever, and they're in Florida. And look how red that state is.
Yeah.
I'm not saying look how red it is, look how blue it is.
The-
I'm not into that. I'm not into it. Proportional representation is always going to be an issue. The electoral college is always going to be an issue. And by God, did it work out right on a number of occasions.
but it does, and that's the checks and
And
balances
it's-
that was the
it's a
genius of
leveler.
our forefathers.
It's a great leveler. And it's a concept that I took quite a while to figure out. Hang about, what the hell is the electoral college about? It blew my mind. because the influence of the Electoral College, it changed the election
Yes, has before more than once.
more than once.
Think about trying to
But it makes perfect sense. Like,
write the Constitution and stuff in 2022. Have you thought about like how in the world did it ever get pulled off?
But let me pull one thing.
about 26-year-old, like Jefferson was like 26
They
at
all
the time.
were.
They were all
Yeah.
young.
But they were genius. And if we
26-year-olds these days are playing video games till 3 o'clock in the morning, ordering Uber Eats.
Probably
and-
still living at their parents'
Yes,
house,
and,
too.
and not,
Oh, yeah.
getting,
In the basement.
not getting laid until they're in their early 30s.
But here's the concept. Here's a concept that I'm keep poking out there, and I hope people grasp the severity of what's going on here. The Democratic Party
Friend of the former Democratic Party.
is not necessarily to be hated and despised as we name tag it. I think the Democrats and their party have been there's been it's almost an insurgency, okay. And if you look at it as a military insurgency, the Democratic Party has been taken over by the progressives. Right? Let's not deny this. Okay? I think the progressives are a Marxist wing, if you will, that has conducted an insurgency campaign on the Democratic Party probably for 4 or 5 decades. And that's been part of a playbook. Okay, if you go back through history, yeah, I say it again, look at your history. That's what's going on. So with an insurgency, it's been a corruption of the Democratic Party. I think, and I used to think, that JFK was an arse. I've looked into his history. I've begun to realise that he was possibly the last true Democrat.
Well, he was the
that
last
was
true
out there.
American president.
He was the last true
and he
Democrat.
took a bullet for his troubles.
Yes, he did. So we'll
That was
take,
by design.
Oh, of course it was, but that's another
And I'm not a
podcast.
conspiracy guy.
That's another.
That's a whole nother podcast.
That's another podcast.
That's a whole nother.
Oh, I could do
if
4 more
we-
hours on conspiracies.
Oh, absolutely, we can go down there. But if
We
we,
will,
can, if
later.
we can,
And I'll fight you over conspiracies all day long.
Oh, me and Amos went battled.
if
Nose
we,
to nose.
Years.
if we consider
Years.
that, as a possibility, that the Democrat no longer exists, the true Democrat.
100%.
Absolutely. So, when I hear through the voting population, oh, my grandfather voted Democrat, my parents voted Democrat, I'm voting Democrat because that's what we do. I'm going to respect them for that, because the creed of the Democrat wasn't too dissimilar from the creed of the Republican. Okay, they were very similar. Maybe in their social engineering was a little bit different in how they perceived how you can support one from a federal standpoint and not the other. So if we look at what's happened here, and I want the narrative to change, is I don't want to view people that voted. I want them to change their thought process and respect that the Democratic Party has actually been corrupted and it's been taken over by the progressives, which has been a political indoctrination. It's been going on for decades. We're talking about a Marxism ideology that the Democratic Party no longer exists. So let's stop beating up on the Democrats, because a Democrat, if he was a true Democrat, I could sit round the table and have a very decent, composed conversation. We could reach a compromise and everything would be fairly pleasant. we're now dealing with progressives that are Marxists,
Guised as Democrats.
disguised as Democrats. They are fascists, and I will not live under the Marxist boot. I refuse to. I will fight against it. I will do it with body and soul. And I hope you join behind me, because I will lead that fight. And it just pisses me off that we have demonised Democrats when we should be demonising progressives.
Yeah.
And it's the
can agree with
progressive
that, yeah.
march that we need to stop.
And you know, like Dwayne, you know,
That's the
came
example.
from an iron town, Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and to this day, he diehard Democrat. He was like, Amos, we had Jesus Christ on this wall in the living room and John F. Kennedy on this wall. I mean, the Democratic Party was, I mean, that, Iron Town. I could take you to a guy's house right now in dairy farmer in his 90s, blind, and it would never vote a Republican. As the Democrats are the farmer's friend, and he's diehard Democrat, and he ain't Democrat. He is. I mean, but
He's going to put his tick on the damn box
yes,
that supports a progressive.
and really, in all honesty, deep down, don't.
They just see that letter in the box.
Don't.
That's all
I mean,
they vote for.
he don't do. He don't
Yep.
agree with anything they have, but
Leave
growing
us
up,
under name.
the Democrat was a friend's farmer.
Uh-huh.
and that's the way they look. They still view it that way.
And here's the cure. Here's the cure to this. And I want to reach out to Democrats who partake in that ethos. I'm saying don't vote Democrat. I'm not saying vote Republican.
No.
That may be against their
Find a
ethic.
good third party candidate.
That may not. That's against their ethic. But
Get rid
let's
of all parties.
let's
Vote for a person.
let's promote people that
Best
are
person for the job,
the
maybe.
best person for the job, and whether he goes under the Democratic title or not, we need to put a greater perspective on the people that we're putting in office rather than the label of Democrat or
As
progressive.
far as I'm concerned, putting a D or an R beside your name should be as complicated as calling somebody black or colored.
Yep, there you go.
Vote. Promote how you feel. Vote for me.
Right,
Screw
man
the
for the job.
Libertarians, screw the Republicans, screw the Democrat. Get rid of all that. Vote for Amos, Simon, Brandon. Billy. Vote for who you're like.
Content
dude,
of your
this
character,
dude
not
right
Vote for
here.
John
understand.
Clements. Vote for Caesar up in town running the
Absolutely.
restaurants. Vote for whoever it
Yeah,
is
this guy
in
right
your
here's
neck
got
of the
it
woods.
together.
Yes, absolutely.
He's the one to put in head. But the two-party system just crashed everything.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's beyond repair, but is it?
Yes,
Is it?
it takes rock bottom
Ask
to come
that
back
question. Is it?
That
Ended up there.
is a good
Ended
way
at
to
that.
shut it. We'll talk about that the next time. So, I don't even know how to describe this episode. It is 3.5 plus hours. We're definitely going to break it down into two. I think this has been a fantastic conversation, and these are the conversations that have to be made.
I thought I was gonna be home by 7.
The,
Sorry, doctor.
wow, these are. You thought you have to be home at 7?
No, I told her I was like, I'll probably be home by like 7:30.
Well,
Here it is rolling on
So,
9:30.
okay, what's your girlfriend? Can you tell us her, what's her
Emily,
name?
yeah.
Emily. Emily, we sincerely apologize, and for his girlfriend, I will make this declaration.
They'll be back.
The next time you come down here, you bring her, and she will completely understand it.
Oh,
My wife, God bless her soul, completely.
Billy blames
understands it.
everything on me.
I should.
Everything on me.
Look, I think we
But
got
his
a
wife loves
fantastic
me, so he
conversation.
gets away with it.
like I said, it felt like 45 minutes had gone by, and you're like, yeah, we're approaching the 3-hour mark.
Wow, I'm so appreciative to have this platform and have this ability to come on here and have a conversation with people from different backgrounds and different perspectives, and to encourage other people to start talking. Just talk.
Good job, Billy.
Amos, thank you. Simon, thank you. Brandon, where can they find you? The Republic?
You can find me on Instagram at the Republic of Appalachia, on Twitter at @of_Appalachia, and you can see our statehood platform at thestateofappalachia.com. Please don't try and buy a flag. I am out of stock right now, and I'll have to refund.
But you
your
did
money.
bring us some flags, though.
I did bring you guys
And-
some the messed up prints, but I'll get you guys the correct ones when they come out as well.
You have a Facebook page, too, right? It's like a group or something?
So there is one. I think it's just the State of Appalachia initiative on Facebook. I'm going to be honest. I got locked out of there as the only admin.
Yeah.
Well, so they just talk and talk and talk in there. My girlfriend tried doing moderation in there for me because I just couldn't split my head.
Yeah.
And somehow we've both been locked out of it. So I just let them go and do their own thing. And
Right,
usually
yeah.
it's the same 3 people posting the same 3 things. If you see me on Instagram, it's where I'm most active.
Yeah, the Instagram's a good one. If you go in there, I
Shoot me
mean,
in the-
look at it. I mean,
There's a lot of
it's
spicy
crazy to
memes
think in
there,
the time
but,
period we're at that
I don't have cell phone
we're 200 years ago, 300 years ago, it was, 1,500 years ago, it was the Bible. 1,000 years ago, it was literature. 200 years ago, it was the printing press. But as long as there has been some type of media, there has always been influence. And it's crazy to think in the year we're in and the time period we're in that something as simple as internet memes are moving culture. And what you're doing, hey, you never know what
if you dig far enough down there, there's some legitimate posts.
it's more than just memes. It
yeah.
really is. It's a lot of good perspectives.
It's
And
just the
we've had some good
yeah,
perspectives.
like
on
I said
here
at the
tonight.
beginning, I don't have the time to sit there and make a well thought out thing. So I figure something that makes me laugh, maybe other people will laugh at it too.
Yeah, and you'll get some perspective. You think you'll come do it again up here with us?
Oh, absolutely! You guys have been the best. Like I said, this is my first studio appearance, so thank you.
Yeah.
Another Woodshop Chronicles. Here we go.
to the wood shop. It's problems.
I'm looking forward
this
to
is
it. But
okay.
thank you guys so much for having me. I'm
Thank
very
y'all
appreciative of it.
very much for being a part of this, and we'll see you next time.